The anomalies are
The
spreading. We must
observation
act
dome of
now.
the USS
Confirmed.
Pathfinder
Deploying
floated in
countermeasures.
darkness,
What's happening?
a
Is it
hemisphere
dangerous?
of reinforced crystal, offering an unobstructed view of the galaxy beyond. Stars scattered across the void like salt grains on black velvet. Distant nebulae glowed in colors that had no names in any Earth language. In the center of that darkness, a small figure sat cross-legged on the deck plating. Mira Kellaway was 9 years old. Her hair hung in 2 braids over her shoulders, tied with ribbons her mother had packed 8 years ago before the Pathfinder left Earth orbit. The ribbons were faded now, worn thin by time and a child's restless fingers. But Mira refused to replace them. She sang softly, her voice barely louder than the hum of the ship's life support systems. "Hush now, sleep tight, the stars will keep you safe tonight." The lullaby was older than spaceflight, older than the wars that nearly destroyed Earth. Her grandmother had sung it, her grandmother's grandmother, an unbroken chain of voices stretching back to a time when humanity believed they were alone in the universe. Mira didn't know she was wrong. She didn't know that in the darkness beyond the crystal dome, sensors watched her, analyzed her, cataloged every detail of her species with cold mechanical precision. She only knew that the stars were beautiful, and the song made her feel less small. The moon will guard your dreams till light's so close your eyes and hold on. The alarm shattered the moment like a hammer through glass. Red emergency lighting flooded the observation dome. The gentle hum of the engines became a howl. Somewhere deep in the ship's superstructure, hull plates groaned under sudden acceleration. Mira's song died in her throat. The stars beyond the dome began to move. Slowly at first, then faster, as the Pathfinder's attitude thrusters fired in rapid sequence. The gentle scatter of light became streaks, became lines, became a blur of motion that made Mira's stomach lurch. She tried to stand, her legs wouldn't obey. The deck beneath her tilted at an angle that defied gravity, and she realized with cold clarity that the ship's artificial gravity had failed. She was floating now untethered, surrounded by stars that spun like a kaleidoscope. "Mom?" Her voice was very small. "Dad?" No answer came. The observation dome was 50 meters from the crew quarters. 50 meters that might as well have been 50 light years when the corridors were sealed and the emergency protocols activated. Mira knew the rules. Every child on the Pathfinder knew them. When the alarm sounded, you stayed where you were. You didn't move. You didn't panic. But knowing the rules and following them were different things when you were 9 years old and alone in the dark. Mira's breathing quickened. Her fingers found the emergency handhold welded to the dome's support structure. She clung to it with both hands, her knuckles white, her heart hammering against her ribs. The stars continued their mad dance, and then cutting through the chaos, a voice. "Mira, sweetheart, can you hear me?" The voice was calm, steady. It carried the kind of authority that came not from rank or position, but from absolute certainty. The certainty that everything would be all right because this person would not allow any other outcome. "Captain Thorne," Mira's voice cracked on the name. "That's right, little one, I'm coming to you. Hold on tight and count to 30 for me. Okay? Can you do that?" Mira nodded, then realized the captain couldn't see her. "Yes,
The
ma'am."
anomaly grows.
"Good
We
girl.
must act.
Start
Our
counting."
defenses are mobilizing.
1,
Time
2,
is short.
3.
Alliance is
The
essential.
emergency
Agreed.
bulkhead
We
at the
stand
far
with
end
you.
of the dome hissed open. Magnetic boots clanged against the deck plating in a steady rhythm. Captain Sarah Thorne moved through the chaos like it was a Sunday stroll, each step deliberate and measured. She was 42 years old, though the years had been kind. Her hair was pulled back in a regulation bun that was somehow still perfect despite the emergency. Her uniform bore the insignia of United Earth Exploration Service, and beneath that, the small bronze star that marked her as a veteran of the crisis years. Sarah Thorne had been a crisis negotiator before she became a captain. She had talked down armed insurgents, diffused hostage situations, and once convinced a suicidal pilot not to crash his cargo hauler into downtown Chicago. She had seen humanity at its worst and survived. This was just another crisis, another problem to solve. 28, 29, 30. Sarah reached Mira exactly as the girl finished counting. Her hands found the child's shoulders, steadied her, grounded her. Through the physical contact, Mira could feel the captain's heartbeat. Slow, calm, unafraid. "There we go. Perfect counting. Now I need you to listen very carefully. Can you do that?" Mira nodded, not trusting her voice. "We've detected an unknown contact, a ship that appeared without warning. Our sensors can't identify it, which is unusual. I don't know yet what their intentions are or whether they're friendly, but I promise you, Mira, I will keep you safe. Do you believe me?" Mira looked into the captain's eyes. They were gray like storm clouds, like steel, like something that would never bend, never break. "I believe you," she whispered. "Then let's get you back to your parents. Hold on to my arm." They moved through the corridors together, Sarah's magnetic boots providing stability for them both. The red emergency lighting painted everything in shades of blood and shadow. Other crew members rushed past, their faces tight with controlled fear. But none of them stopped. None of them questioned. They saw their captain moving with purpose, and that was enough. The medical bay was 3 decks down. Dr. Lyra Castellan met them at the door, her face pale but composed. She pulled Mira into a fierce embrace. "Thank you, Captain." "She's brave," Sarah said simply, "like her mother." Lyra managed a weak smile. "Her father's actually braver. He's up in engineering, keeping the reactor stable." "Then she got the best of both of you." Sarah squeezed Mira's shoulder once more. "Remember what I told you. Everything's going to be all right." She turned to leave, but Mira's voice stopped her. "Captain, what's out there? What did the sensors find?" Sarah paused. For a moment, her expression flickered. Something passed across her face that might have been concern or anticipation or something else entirely. "I don't know their intentions yet, sweetheart, but I'm going to find out." The bridge of the Pathfinder was a masterpiece of human engineering designed for long-duration exploration at the edge of known space. Holographic displays floated
The
in 3
anomaly
dimensions,
grows. We must act.
showing
Our
everything
defenses
from
are
hull
mobilizing.
integrity
Time is
to
short.
distant
Alliance
star
is
systems.
essential.
The
Agreed.
captain's
We stand
chair
with you.
sat elevated at the center, surrounded by workstations for navigation, communications, tactical, and science. Sarah took her position with practiced ease. Around her, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. No one spoke unless they had something worth saying. No one panicked. They were professionals, selected from millions of candidates trained for years before the Pathfinder ever left Earth orbit. But even professionals could be shaken. "Report," Sarah said quietly. "Commander Marcus Webb." Her first officer stood at the tactical station. He was a large man, broad-shouldered and imposing, with hands that looked like they could crush steel, but those hands moved across his console with surprising delicacy. "Unknown contact bearing 270 Mark 15, distance approximately 400,000 kilometers, and closing. Mass readings are inconsistent, Captain. The computer keeps trying to recalculate. Energy signature. That's the problem. We're detecting energy output that doesn't match any known classification in our database. It's not fusion, not antimatter, not 0 point. It's something else." Sarah leaned forward. "How long have we been cataloging alien technology, Commander?" 40 years, ma'am, since the manned survey mission began. And in 40 years, we've never encountered an energy signature we couldn't identify." "No, ma'am, never." Webb paused. "Though our unmanned probes have been observing this region for far longer. 2 centuries of passive surveillance. If this signature doesn't match anything in that database either, then we're looking at something genuinely new," Sarah finished, "or something very, very old that's been hiding." Her fingers drummed once against the armrest of her chair, a small tell visible only to those who knew her well. It meant she was thinking, calculating, running through possibilities at a speed that would shame most computers. "Hailing frequencies," she said, "all standard protocols." Lieutenant Asha Okoye, the communications officer, initiated contact without hesitation. Her voice carried across the void, translated simultaneously into 47 different languages by the Pathfinder's linguistic database. "Unknown vessel, this is the USS Pathfinder of the United Earth Exploration Service. You have entered our survey region. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." They waited. The stars beyond the view screen continued their eternal dance. The unknown contact continued its steady approach, unchanged in speed or heading. Sarah counted to 60 in her head, then to 120. "Repeat the hail, Lieutenant. Cycle through all registered language protocols." Okoye complied. This time the message went out in languages that predated spaceflight, in mathematical sequences, in pure tonal variations designed to convey peaceful intent through sound alone. The response was silence. Captain Webb said, his voice carefully neutral, "Recommend we activate defensive systems." Sarah considered. The Pathfinder was an exploration vessel, not a warship. Its weapons
The anomaly
were designed
grows.
for
We must
self-defense,
act.
for
Our
clearing
defenses
debris
are
fields and
mobilizing.
deterring
Time is
pirates.
short.
Alliance is
Against
essential.
a truly
Agreed.
hostile
We
force,
stand with you.
they would be useless. But appearances mattered. Shields to full, weapons hot but not locked, navigation plot and evasion course. If they keep closing, I want options. "Aye, Captain." The bridge fell silent again. Sarah watched the holographic display as the unknown contact drew nearer. 400,000 kilometers became 300,000, became 200,000. At this distance, the Pathfinder's optical sensors could finally resolve details. The unknown vessel appeared on the main view screen. It was unlike anything in Earth's databases. The hull was dark, almost black, with minimal external lighting. The design was cylindrical, but not in the streamlined way of human ships. This was functional, brutal. A massive rotating section near the center suggested artificial gravity generation through centripetal force, a technology humanity had abandoned decades ago. Propulsion systems at the rear showed no visible exhaust, no plasma trails, no fusion torches. Whatever drove this ship left no trace. But it was the symbol on the bow that held Sarah's attention. A geometric pattern, precise and intricate. Circles within circles connected by lines that formed constellations she didn't recognize. And beneath that, in what might have been the ship's native script, a series of characters that looked like art and language combined. "Analysis, please," Sarah said quietly. Dr. Kieran Frost, the science officer, was already working. His fingers flew across holographic controls, running every scanning protocol the Pathfinder possessed. "Hull composition is... I can't identify it, Captain. It's reading as metallic, but the molecular structure doesn't match any known alloy. The rotating section is moving at exactly 1 revolution every 8.2 seconds. That would generate approximately Earth standard gravity." "They know how strong we are," Sarah murmured. "Ma'am?" "Nothing. Continue." "The energy signature is coming from a central core. Best guess it's some kind of reactor, but the readings are off the scale. Whatever they're using for power, it's orders of magnitude more efficient than our antimatter systems." Sarah absorbed this information in silence. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet intensity. No one stated the obvious. No one needed to. They were looking at a vessel from a civilization far more advanced than Earth, and that civilization was moving directly toward them. 200,000 kilometers, Webb reported. Still closing. Sarah made her decision. "On all hands, this is the captain. Prepare for possible contact. All non-essential personnel to emergency stations. Seal all bulkheads. This is not a drill." The ship transformed around her. Emergency protocols engaged across every deck. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency, securing equipment, checking systems, preparing for whatever came next. In the medical bay, Lyra Castellan held her daughter close and whispered promises she hoped she could keep. In engineering, Thomas Kellaway, Mira's father, monitored the reactor cores and prayed to gods he didn't believe in.
The anomaly grows.
And on
We
the
must
bridge,
act.
Captain
Our defenses
Sarah
are
Thorne sat in her
mobilizing.
chair
Time is short.
and
Alliance
watched
is
the
essential.
unknown vessel
Agreed.
approach.
We stand with you.
100,000 kilometers, 50,000, 25,000. Captain Okoye said, her voice tight. "We're being scanned. Multiple sensor sweeps, very high resolution. They're reading everything. Hull composition, crew complement, weapon systems, reactor output. Everything." "Let them look," Sarah said calmly. "We have nothing to hide." The unknown vessel reached 10,000 kilometers and stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. The two ships hung in space, separated by a distance that was nothing in cosmic terms, but everything in human ones. Then the communication came. It wasn't a voice, it wasn't a signal. It was a direct data transmission, bypassing every security protocol the Pathfinder possessed, inserting itself directly into the ship's main computer. Warning lights flashed across every console. Webb swore quietly. Okoye scrambled to isolate the intrusion, but it was too fast, too sophisticated. The data resolved into text on the main view screen. 3 words in perfect English. "Identify yourselves immediately." Sarah Thorne smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Well," she said softly, "at least they speak our language." She stood smoothing her uniform with deliberate care. Around her, the bridge crew watched with barely concealed anxiety. They had trained for first contact scenarios. They had practiced protocols and studied diplomatic procedures, but nothing prepared you for the moment when it actually happened. Sarah touched the communications control on her chair's armrest. "This is Captain Sarah Thorne, commanding the USS Pathfinder United Earth Exploration Service. We are a peaceful exploration vessel conducting a survey mission in this region of space. We mean no harm and seek only knowledge and understanding." She paused, choosing her next words with care. "We apologize for any territorial incursion. We were not aware this region was claimed. We will gladly relocate our operations if requested." The response came faster this time. "You have no authorization to be here. Your vessel is unregistered. Your technology is unclassified. Submit to inspection immediately." Webb leaned close to Sarah's chair. "Captain, they're powering weapons. Multiple systems coming online." Sarah didn't move. Her voice remained calm, almost conversational. "Unknown vessel, we are willing to cooperate with reasonable requests. However, we cannot submit to inspection without proper diplomatic protocols. We represent the interests of Earth and humanity. We request formal contact with your government or appropriate authorities. The unknown vessel's response was not words, it was movement. The great ship rotated on its axis with impossible grace, presenting what were clearly weapon ports along its flanks. 12 of them, maybe more, each one large enough to swallow the Pathfinder whole. Shields holding air, Webb reported, his voice steady despite the tension. But Captain, if they fire... They won't, Sarah said. How do you know? Because we're still alive.
The anomaly
She
grows.
touched
We must
the
act.
communication
Our defenses
controls
are
again.
mobilizing.
Time is
Unknown
short.
vessel,
Alliance
we
is
have
essential.
detected your
Agreed.
weapons
We
activation.
stand with you.
We consider this a hostile act. Please power down immediately. We wish to resolve this peacefully. This is your final warning. Submit to inspection or be destroyed. Sarah's smile widened. Her crew knew that smile. It was the expression she wore when playing chess when she was 3 moves ahead and her opponent didn't know it yet. Computer, she said quietly, transmit authorization code, Thorn Alpha 770, encryption protocol silent sentries. The computer responded with a soft chime. Data began streaming from the Pathfinder to the unknown vessel. Not everything, not even close, but enough. Enough to change everything. The transmission lasted exactly 17 seconds. When it ended, the unknown vessel's weapons powered down. Not slowly, not gradually, all at once, as if someone had thrown a switch. For the first time since the encounter began, uncertainty crept into the alien communication. What? What is this information? How do you possess our tactical frequencies, our shield harmonics, our reactor specifications? Sarah leaned back in her chair. Her voice was gentle now, almost sad. Because we've been watching you. For 200 years, our unmanned surveillance probes have observed your empire. Learning, recording, cataloging every transmission, every ship movement, every technological advancement. And 40 years ago, we launched 12 manned exploration vessels to make contact with the civilizations we'd been studying. You're meeting one of them right now. The bridge fell absolutely silent. Even her own crew stared at her in shock. Some of them had suspected, some had guessed, but hearing it confirmed was different. Webb found his voice first. Captain, the entire mission. Sarah kept her eyes on the view screen, on the unknown vessel that suddenly seemed much less threatening. The Pathfinder isn't the first human presence in this region of Space, Commander. Just the first one to reveal ourselves. For 2 centuries, unmanned probes, stealth satellites, and reconnaissance drones have been observing the Zalkari Empire from the shadows. Watching, listening, learning everything we could. She paused. They don't know who we are, but we know everything about them. The alien response came after a long delay. When it did, the aggressive certainty was gone. In its place was something that might have been confusion or fear. You observed us for 200 years. Sensors must be malfunctioning. Our networks would have detected any intrusion. Would they? Sarah asked mildly. Your sensor networks are designed to detect vessels using your own technology. Faster than light drives that create subspace ripples, energy weapons that emit specific radiation signatures, shields that operate on gravitational principles. She stood moving to the view screen, looking directly at the image of the alien ship. We don't use any of those technologies. Our FTL drives work on different principles. Our weapons are kinetic projectiles
anomaly
with
grows.
no energy
We must
signature
act.
until
Our
they
defenses
fire.
are mobilizing.
Our
Time is
shields
short.
are
Alliance
layered
is essential.
composites,
Agreed.
not
We stand
gravitational
with you.
fields. To your sensors, we're ghosts, shadows, nothing. Recalculate. This cannot be accurate. And yet here we are. Sarah turned to her crew. They were all staring at her now, processing this revelation. Some looked betrayed. Some looked vindicated. Webb just looked tired. You knew, he said quietly. All this time, you knew about them. I did. The entire command structure knew. We've been preparing for this moment since before the Pathfinder launched. The 12 exploration vessels were sent in different directions precisely because our 200 years of unmanned observation identified 12 major civilizations in this galactic region. We've been planning first contact with each of them. Why didn't you tell us? Because fear changes behavior, Marcus. If you knew you were entering space claimed by a potentially hostile empire, you would have acted differently, moved differently, and they would have noticed. This way we appeared exactly as we should. Innocent, curious, harmless. She looked back at the view screen. Until the moment we chose not to be. The alien vessel hung in space, its weapons dark, its mighty engines silent. For the first time in 3,000 years of galactic dominance, the Zalkari Empire had encountered something they didn't understand. Something that had been watching them from the shadows. Something that knew their every weakness. The communication came again, and this time the tone was different. Careful, almost respectful. Captain Thorne, we would appreciate formal diplomatic contact on neutral ground to discuss, to understand. Sarah allowed herself a small, genuine smile. We would be happy to accommodate that request, transmitting coordinates for Sanctuary Station, a neutral facility operated by independent merchants. We can meet there in 48 hours. Will that be acceptable? Acceptable, we will inform our fleet commander. The unknown vessel began to withdraw, slowly, carefully, like a predator reassessing prey that turned out to have teeth. When it had retreated to a safe distance, it vanished in a flash of light and twisted space, jumping to faster-than-light speeds using technology humanity still didn't fully understand. The bridge crew remained frozen, processing everything they had just witnessed. It was Webb who finally broke the silence. Captain, what the hell just happened? Sarah turned to face them. Her crew, her people, the men and women she had led for 8 years across the vast emptiness of space. First contact commander. The real kind, not the sanitized version from training simulations. But 200 years, all that surveillance, the entire mission was a setup. Not a setup, a preparation. Humanity learned a long time ago that knowledge is survival. After the crisis, years after we nearly destroyed ourselves, our governments finally agreed on something. If we ever encountered alien civilizations, we would not
The
go in
anomaly
blind.
grows. We must
watch,
act.
Our
learn,
defenses are
prepare.
mobilizing.
Time is
She
short.
moved
Alliance
back
is
to her
essential.
chair, but didn't
Agreed.
sit.
We stand with you.
We saw what the Zalkari Empire did to other species through our observations, how they conquered, how they absorbed, how they eliminated anyone who threatened their dominance. We couldn't afford to be weak, couldn't afford to be ignorant. So we watched for 2 centuries through unmanned systems, and when we finally had enough data, we sent 12 ships to make contact on our terms, not theirs. Dr. Frost spoke up, his voice hesitant. Captain, with respect, this feels like manipulation, like we deliberately deceived them. We did, Sarah said simply, and it probably saved our lives. If we had stumbled into their territory blind and ignorant, they would have captured us, studied us, classified us, filed us away in their database like specimens, or worse, eliminated us as a potential threat. She looked around at her crew. Instead, we're the ones they can't classify, the ones they fear. And fear, my friends, is the foundation of respect. Okoye raised her hand slightly. What happens now? Now we go to Sanctuary Station. We meet with their fleet commander, and we negotiate a relationship between humanity and the Zalkari Empire based on mutual strength, not servitude. Sarah sat down again, her expression softening slightly. But first we stand down from alert status. Someone check on Mira and make sure she's all right. And someone get me a full status report on all systems. We have 48 hours to prepare for the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. The crew moved to obey. The immediate crisis passed, but the shock remained. The revelation that their peaceful exploration mission was something much more calculated. Something that had been planned for longer than most of them had been alive. Webb lingered at Sarah's side. They're going to send a fleet, aren't they? This isn't over. Oh, they'll send a fleet, Sarah agreed. Probably the biggest show of force they can muster. They'll want to intimidate us, remind us who the dominant power is. Can we handle that? Sarah thought of the data she had transmitted. The tactical frequencies, the shield harmonics, the reactor specifications. 200 years of observation compressed into 17 seconds of information. Just enough to prove they'd been watching. Not enough to reveal everything they knew. We don't need to handle them, Marcus. We just need to make them understand that fighting us would be too costly. That diplomacy is the better option. And if they don't see it that way, Sarah's expression hardened, then they'll learn the hard way that humans are very, very good at war. We've had 3,000 years of practice on each other. We know every trick, every tactic, every way to make violence efficient and terrible. She paused. But I really hope it doesn't come to that. 3 decks below in the medical bay, Mira Kellaway lay in her mother's arms and tried not to cry. Is it over? She whispered. Lyra stroked her daughter's hair. For now, sweetheart. For now.
The anomaly grows.
Was the
We must
captain
act.
telling the
Our
truth?
defenses are mobilizing.
Time is
Everything's
short.
going to be
Alliance
all
is
right.
essential.
Lyra
Agreed.
thought
We
about
stand
the red
with
alert klaxons, about the unknown vessel with its impossible weapons, about a 48-hour countdown to a meeting that could determine humanity's fate. But she looked at her daughter's face, saw the trust there, the hope, and she chose her words carefully. Captain Thorne has never lied to us. If she says everything will be all right, then I believe her. Me too, Mira said softly. She closed her eyes and hummed the lullaby again, quieter now, barely audible. Hush now. Sleep tight. The stars will keep you safe tonight. Outside the medical bay's viewports, the stars continued their eternal dance. Uncaring, unknowing, bearing silent witness to the moment when humanity stepped from the shadows and announced themselves to a galaxy that thought it knew everything. They were wrong. They had always been wrong. And somewhere in the vastness of space, a Zalkari fleet commander received an impossible report and began to understand just how wrong they had been. The command center of Surveillance Station Arcturus 7 had been built to last 1,000 years. Its walls were reinforced duralloy capable of withstanding direct hits from antimatter warheads. Its sensor arrays could track a single ship across half a star system. Its database contained 3 millennia of accumulated knowledge, every encounter, every species, every vessel that had ever crossed into Zalkari space. Fleet Commander Zarketh stood in the center of that command center and stared at a screen that showed absolutely nothing. No match, no classification, no entry. For 3,000 years, that had never happened. Until now. Zarketh was 52 cycles old, which translated to roughly 60 Earth years. He came from a high-gravity world where the weak died young and the strong learned to move with deadly efficiency. His species had 4 arms, 6 eyes arranged in a hexagonal pattern, and a crest of bone ridges that ran from forehead to spine. That crest was fully extended now, a physiological response to genuine confusion. "Run the analysis again," he commanded. His voice carried harmonic overtones, the result of dual vocal cords that could produce sounds human ears would find unsettling. Sensor operator Telrus, a young female barely into her second decade of service, worked her console with all 4 hands. Her secondary eyes tracked data streams, while her primary eyes remained fixed on her superior officer. Already completed tertiary verification, Commander. Database search across all parameters. No match in any classification. The vessel is completely unknown. Zarketh's secondary hearts began to accelerate. His species experienced that particular physiological response when confronting something genuinely novel, something that didn't fit the established patterns. He had felt it only twice before in his long career. Once when his mate gave birth to their first offspring. Once when he watched his homeworld from orbit for the first time. Never in the line of duty. "Specifications," he said quietly. Tilris manipulated her controls. Holographic data materialized above the command center's central projector.
The anomaly grows. We must
Mass
act.
readings
Our
are
defenses are
inconsistent,
mobilizing.
Commander.
Time is short.
The
Alliance
computer
is
keeps
essential.
trying to
Agreed.
recalculate.
We stand with
Energy
you.
signature doesn't match any known classification. Hull composition is unidentified. Propulsion system shows no visible exhaust. She paused. And Commander, the computer has 0 matches in the historical database. Not similar, not close. 0. Zarketh moved closer to the holographic display. The unknown vessel rotated there in miniature, its dark hull catching light in strange ways. He studied it with the intensity of a predator examining new prey. But something about this prey bothered him. The ship was too deliberate, too purposeful. It maintained perfect velocity and heading, as if it knew exactly where it was going and saw no reason to deviate. "Hailing frequencies," Zarketh ordered. "Standard first contact protocols." Communications Officer Rekval initiated contact cycling through 47 different languages. The message went out in Zalkari primary in the trade tongues of allied species in mathematical sequences designed to convey peaceful intent. The unknown vessel's response was silence. "Repeat the hail," Zarketh said. His crest flattened slightly, a sign of growing concern. "All registered language protocols." The second attempt produced the same result. The vessel continued on its course unchanged, uncommunicating. Zarketh made his decision quickly. 20 cycles of monitoring this sector had taught him caution. When something appeared in Imperial space with no record of its existence, you didn't take chances. Priority transmission to War Marshal Draven. Have him bring Battle Group Hammerfall to these coordinates. Standard interdiction protocols. I want that ship stopped and identified. The response came within minutes. Draven's sharp features appeared on the communication screen. He was older than Zarketh, his crest graying at the tips, his 4 arms bearing the scars of a dozen campaigns. He wore ceremonial battle armor that gleamed even through the holographic transmission. "Commander Zarketh, you're certain this requires a full battle group. When something appears in our space with no record of its existence, Marshal, I prefer overwhelming force, especially given recent intelligence reports about increased activity in the frontier regions." Zarketh transmitted all sensor data to Draven's flagship. 12 cruisers and 4 dreadnoughts should suffice. Standard formation, standard protocols. Simply stop it and determine what it is. Draven's expression showed confidence bordering on amusement. One ship against 16, Commander. We could accomplish this with a single cruiser. Nevertheless, I want overwhelming presence. And Marshal, enable all recording systems. If this is a first contact situation, the High Council will want complete documentation. As you command, Commander. Draven offered the traditional salute, his forearms crossing over his chest in sequence. The transmission ended. Zarketh returned to the observation deck, watching the red marker on the long-range display. 2 hours until Battle Group Hammerfall arrived. 2 hours to wonder what waited in that
The anomaly
dark ship.
grows. We must
What
act.
species?
Our defenses
What
are
intentions?
mobilizing.
Time is short.
What
Alliance is
capabilities?
essential.
Agreed.
His
We
secondary
stand with
eyes
you.
tracked movement on an auxiliary display. Intelligence reports from across the frontier. Other surveillance stations reporting similar anomalies. Unknown contacts appearing in different sectors. All with the same pattern, no database match, advanced technology, deliberate movement. It wasn't just one ship, it was a pattern. And patterns suggested organization. Purpose. The unknown vessel continued its steady progression deeper into Zelkari territory. Unchanging, unwavering, like it had every right to be there. Zarketh's crest extended fully. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than one contact, bigger than one encounter. The galaxy was changing, and the Zalkari Empire had just received its first warning. When Battle Group Hammerfall dropped out of faster-than-light travel, it did so in perfect formation. 16 warships appearing simultaneously in a three-dimensional pattern that had been refined over centuries of military doctrine. The dreadnoughts formed the corners of a massive tetrahedron, their weapons arrays capable of reducing small moons to debris. The cruisers filled the spaces between, creating overlapping fields of fire that left no avenue of escape. It was a formation designed to make lesser species surrender before a single shot was fired. Zarketh watched from Arcturus 7's observation deck as the battle group took position. Pride swelled in his chest. This was the Zalkari Empire at its finest. Disciplined, powerful, inevitable. Draven's voice came through on priority channel. We have visual confirmation, Commander. Transmitting now. The main view screen switched to an optical feed from the flagship's forward cameras. The unknown vessel filled the display. Zarketh stepped closer, his 6 eyes tracking details with predatory focus. The ship was unlike anything in Imperial records, yet strangely familiar in its basic configuration. A central cylindrical hull with rotating sections. Propulsion systems that showed no visible exhaust. The hull was dark, almost black, with minimal external lighting. And on the bow, a symbol that stopped Zarketh's thoughts entirely. A blue sphere, white swirls that might have been weather patterns, brown and green continents. A world. The ship bore the image of a world on its hull. Marshal Draven, Zarketh said slowly, document those markings, all of them, especially that sphere. Cross-reference with historical survey data. Already recording, Commander. Initial analysis suggests the sphere matches survey records from 800 cycles ago, a planet in the outer regions. The survey classified it as having primitive lifeforms and moved on. 800 cycles is a long time for a species to develop. Indeed. Draven's tactical display showed Battle Group Hammerfall surrounding the unknown vessel in a three-dimensional formation that left no avenue of escape. Perfect positioning, perfect execution. Initiating final hail. Zarketh listened as Draven delivered the standard interdiction message.
The anomaly
His
grows.
voice
We
carried
must
the
act.
weight of
Our
imperial
defenses are
authority,
mobilizing.
the
Time is short.
certainty of
Alliance is
3,000
essential.
years of
Agreed.
dominance.
We stand with
Unknown
you.
vessel, you are surrounded by Imperial military forces. Cut your engines immediately and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will result in forcible seizure of your vessel. This is your final warning. The unknown ship continued forward, unwavering. No response, Draven reported. Recommend activation of tractor beams. Tractor beams were gravitational fields that could seize a vessel and hold it immobile. The Empire had refined the technology over millennia. 4 cruisers working in coordination could lock down a ship 3 times their size. This vessel was smaller than a cruiser. It should have been trivial. Proceed, Zarketh said. Disable their engines if they resist, but I want that ship intact. 4 cruisers activated their tractor beam projectors. Invisible fields of gravitational force reached out across space, converging on the unknown vessel from multiple angles. The beams locked on. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the unknown vessel did something that made Zarketh's secondary heart stop entirely. It accelerated. Not away from the tractor beams, not in evasion. It accelerated directly through them, as if the gravitational fields were meaningless. As if the combined power of 4 Imperial cruisers was nothing more than a mild inconvenience. Alarms screamed across Battle Group Hammerfall's communication channels. What tractor beams are ineffective? Draven's shout carried pure disbelief. Recalibrating, no, the beams are functioning. The vessel is simply ignoring them. The unknown ship rotated on its axis with grace that should have been impossible for its mass. It presented what Zarketh now recognized as weapon ports. They didn't glow with plasma charge. They didn't hum with particle beam buildup. They were dark, simple mechanical openings. All ships' evasive maneuvers. Draven's order was cut short by what happened next. The unknown vessel fired. But it didn't fire energy weapons. Zarketh watched in disbelief as solid projectiles launched from the ship at velocities that made his tactical computer scream warnings. Kinetic rounds. Physical matter accelerating at speeds that approached significant fractions of light speed, 30%, the computer estimated. The Empire had abandoned such primitive weapons 3 millennia ago. These weapons were not primitive. The first cruiser took a hit to its engine section. Not a devastating explosion. Not a catastrophic breach. A surgical strike that severed the connection between the power core and the drive systems with mathematical precision. The cruiser went dark, tumbling in space. Life support intact. Crew alive, but propulsion gone. One shot, one kill. Return fire, Draven commanded. 12 ships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma bolts and particle beams converged on the unknown vessel from every angle. Enough firepower to vaporize a space station. Enough destructive force to crack a planet's crust. The unknown ship simply wasn't there. It moved with impossible agility, its trajectory shifting in ways that violated
anomaly
every
grows.
principle
We must
of
act.
momentum
Our
that
defenses are
Zarketh had
mobilizing.
learned in the
Time is
Imperial
short.
Naval
Alliance is
Academy.
essential.
Agreed.
Shots that
We
should have
stand with you.
connected passed through empty space as the vessel seemed to predict firing solutions before they were executed. Zarketh's analytical mind cataloged the impossibility. The ship was too small to carry the inertial dampeners necessary for such maneuvers. Its mass was too low for the thrust-to-weight ratio it was demonstrating. Its trajectory changes suggested it knew where each shot would be before it was fired. Another kinetic round struck a dreadnought. This time Zarketh saw the precision clearly. The projectile hit exactly where the shield generator connected to the main power grid. The dreadnought's shields collapsed instantly, leaving it vulnerable but otherwise undamaged. They're not trying to destroy us, Zarketh whispered, realization dawning like cold water. They're disabling us, surgically, precisely. A third shot took out the weapons array on another cruiser. A fourth disabled the navigation systems on a dreadnought. Each strike was perfectly placed, hitting critical systems while carefully avoiding crew quarters and life support. The unknown vessel wasn't fighting to kill, it was fighting to neutralize. And it was winning. Battle Group Hammerfall's formation dissolved into chaos. Ships tried to scatter to find range to establish any kind of tactical advantage. The unknown vessel moved through them like a predator through prey. Each movement economical, purposeful, its weapons fired with mechanical regularity. Each shot accounting for a disabled system, a crippled ship. Draven's flagship took a hit to its main communications array. His voice became broken, static-filled. Commander, sensors indicate, cannot maintain. The transmission cut out entirely. Zarketh could only watch as the battle unfolded. Watch as the pride of the Imperial Navy's 16 of the most advanced warships ever constructed were systematically dismantled by a single unknown vessel. Stage 1, contempt. Primitives with their obsolete kinetic weapons. Stage 2, curiosity. How are they penetrating our shields? Stage 3, shock. This shouldn't be possible. Zarketh felt his worldview shifting with each passing second. Everything he knew about warfare, about technology, about imperial superiority, was being proven wrong in real time. 6 minutes after the engagement began, it was over. Battle Group Hammerfall floated in space. 16 ships reduced to helpless hulks. Engines disabled. Weapons offline. Shields collapsed. Emergency beacons screaming for assistance. But almost no casualties. The unknown vessel had been surgical, almost gentle in its devastation. A few injuries from impacts and sudden maneuvers. Some crew with broken bones from failed inertial dampeners. But only one death. Zarketh's console showed the casualty report. Lieutenant Talvik assigned to Draven's flagship, 19 cycles old. His restraints had failed during an evasive maneuver. Impact with a bulkhead at high velocity. Instant death. The
The
nephew of
anomaly
War Marshal
grows.
Draven.
We must act.
Our
The
defenses
unknown
are
ship
mobilizing.
oriented
Time is
itself
short.
back to
Alliance
its
is
original
essential.
heading
Agreed.
and
We
engaged
stand
its drive
with you.
systems. It accelerated smoothly away from the debris field of disabled Imperial warships, resuming its course as if nothing had interrupted its journey. Zarketh stood frozen on the observation deck, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. In 3,000 years of Imperial expansion, nothing like this had ever been recorded. A single unknown vessel had defeated a full battle group without suffering a scratch, without firing a single unnecessary shot, without ever acknowledging their communications. Stage 4 beginning. I underestimated them. We all did. Send priority alert to Imperial Command, Zarketh said, his voice barely above a whisper. Code Crimson. Unknown hostile capability encountered. Species unidentified. Technology unclassified. Threat level. He paused, struggling to find the appropriate designation. Threat level cannot be determined with current data. Recommend immediate High Council briefing. The communications officer stared at him. Commander Code Crimson hasn't been issued in over 500 cycles. Issue it now, Zarketh commanded, and add this to the report. Whatever that was, whoever built it, they've been watching us. They knew exactly where to hit us. They understood our tactics, our technology, our weaknesses. He looked at the distant point of light that represented the unknown vessel now accelerating beyond sensor range. They've studied us thoroughly, and we know absolutely nothing about them. This asymmetry represents a strategic threat of the highest order. The wreckage of Battle Group Hammerfall drifted in space. Crews worked frantically to restore power, to reactivate systems, to understand what had just happened to them. On the Dreadnought, Crimson Dawn War Marshal Draven pulled himself from the debris of his command chair. Blood ran from a cut above his left eye. His ceremonial armor was scorched, but he was alive. Around him, his bridge crew struggled to restore function to damaged systems. Casualty report, Draven growled. His second officer, Lieutenant Commander Krelvon, worked his console with 3 of his 4 arms. The 4th hung useless, broken in the attack. Checking all ships now, Marshal. Most crews reporting injuries, some critical, but... He paused, his crest rising in confusion. Only 1 fatality confirmed, sir. Won a battle of that intensity, there must be... Lieutenant Talvek, sir. Your nephew. His restraint system failed during evasive maneuvers. He struck a bulkhead at high velocity. Death was instantaneous. Medical confirms no other fatalities across the entire battle group. Draven felt his secondary hearts accelerate. 1 death. His brother's son. The promising young officer he'd personally recommended for this assignment, in a battle that should have killed hundreds. They could have destroyed us, he said slowly. Every shot was precise. They targeted systems, not crew quarters. They disabled us without killing us.
The anomaly grows. We must act.
Our defenses are mobilizing.
Time is short.
Alliance is essential.
Message.
Agreed. We
They
stand
wanted us
with
to
you.
understand. They could have annihilated us, but they didn't want to. They wanted us alive, witnessing, learning. Draven moved to what remained of his tactical display. The last recorded position of the unknown vessel appeared there, a red marker, racing away into deep space. What kind of enemy defeats you completely and then lets you live? Krelvon's expression was troubled. One that doesn't consider us enemies, or one that considers us beneath concern. Draven's voice was bitter. For 3,000 years, the Zalkari Empire has been the apex predator, the dominant force, the species that others feared. In 6 minutes, that certainty was shattered by a ship we can't even identify. Marshal, the communications officer, called out. We're receiving a transmission from Commander Zarketh at Arcturus 7. Put him through. Zarketh's image materialized, grainy and distorted by the damaged systems. Marshal Draven, what is your status? Alive, Draven said simply. Humiliated, but alive. My nephew is dead, Lieutenant Talvek, but you already know that. I'm sorry for your loss, Marshal. He was a promising officer. He was 19 cycles old. Draven's voice cracked. His first deep space assignment. I told my brother he would be safe, that this was routine patrol duty. Zarketh's crest flattened in sympathy. Marshal, I have new information. While you were engaged, I cross-referenced those hull markings with historical survey data. The blue sphere matches a planet surveyed 800 cycles ago, third from its sun, cataloged as having primitive life. The survey team noted it and moved on. 800 cycles ago. If they developed faster than light travel since then they've had centuries to reach our borders. Centuries to study us without us even knowing they existed. And Commander, there's more. I've received reports from other frontier stations, similar contacts, unknown vessels appearing in different sectors, all with advanced technology, all moving with purpose. Draven's crest extended fully. This wasn't an isolated encounter. This was coordinated. Exactly, multiple vessels, multiple contact points, and all of them displaying the same restraint, disabling our forces without unnecessary killing. Marshall, I believe we're facing the opening moves of a carefully planned first contact scenario. They're announcing their presence across our entire frontier simultaneously. How many ships? Unknown, at least 7 confirmed contacts so far, possibly more. Draven looked at the body of his nephew being carried from the bridge on a stretcher. Talvek had been so young, so eager, so convinced that joining the military would bring him glory and honor. Instead, he died in the first encounter with a species that shouldn't exist. The only casualty in a battle that should have killed hundreds, and somehow that made it worse. One death among hundreds of survivors. One family destroyed while others
The
celebrated
anomaly
survival.
grows. We must act.
The
Our
mathematics
defenses are
of restraint
mobilizing.
were
Time is
cruel.
short.
Alliance is
Commander
essential.
Zarketh,
Agreed.
what are your
We stand with you.
recommendations? The High Council is convening an emergency session. They want you to return to the capital immediately for debriefing. But Marshal, there's more. The unknown vessel transmitted something before it left the area. Not to us, to somewhere else. We intercepted fragments of the signal. What did it say? Our linguistic computers managed a partial translation. 2 words repeating. Sanctuary Station. Draven's crest extended fully. The neutral trading post. They're going to Sanctuary Station. For diplomatic contact, presumably. They defeated us, humiliated us, and now they want to talk. Then by all the ancestors we will talk. Draven's voice was hard, determined. Prepare my ship for jump as soon as engines are restored. I'm going to Sanctuary Station. If these humans want to negotiate, then we'll negotiate. But on terms that recognize their capabilities, not as primitives, as equals. Marshall is confronting them, again wise. They didn't kill us, Commander. That means they want something. And I intend to find out what. More importantly, I intend to understand who they are, what they want, why they've been watching us for centuries. He looked at the tactical display one more time. And I intend to ensure my nephew's death meant something. That it wasn't just an accident in a pointless skirmish. That it becomes the last casualty in what could become the most important diplomatic contact in Imperial history. The transmission ended. Draven stood alone on his damaged bridge and tried to process what had just happened. In 6 minutes, everything he knew about warfare had been proven wrong. Every assumption about Imperial dominance had been shattered. And somewhere in the darkness of space, a ship from a world called Earth was traveling to a neutral station to begin negotiations. Negotiations that would determine whether the Zalkari Empire faced a new ally or a new threat, or perhaps both. Draven touched the tactical display one more time, looking at the recorded trajectory of the human vessel. 6 minutes, he whispered. They defeated the pride of our fleet in 6 minutes, and they did it while trying not to kill us. Stage 4 fully realized, I underestimated them completely. We all did, and now we pay the price for our arrogance. He thought of his nephew, of the promising young life cut short, of the grief his brother would feel, of the funeral they would hold. One death, one too many, and in the silence of his broken ship and with the stars bearing witness to his humiliation and his grief, War Marshal Draven began to understand that the galaxy had just become much larger, much more dangerous, and much less certain than he had ever imagined. The age of Imperial dominance was ending, a new age was beginning, and humanity, patient and prepared, had been waiting in the shadows for 200 years to announce their arrival. The mess hall of the USS Pathfinder was designed for functionality, not comfort. Metal tables bolted to the deck, chairs that
The
folded
anomaly
into wall
grows. We must
compartments.
act.
Our
A
defenses
food
are
synthesizer
mobilizing.
that
Time
could
is
produce
short.
70
Alliance is
different meals,
essential.
all
Agreed.
of them
We
tasting
stand with
vaguely the same. But at 0600-hour ship time, it was the closest thing to home the crew had. Mira Kellaway sat at a corner table, her legs swinging beneath her because her feet didn't quite reach the floor. A tray of something that was supposed to be oatmeal sat in front of her, mostly untouched. She pushed the spoon through the gray mass, creating patterns, watching them dissolve. Her mother would have told her to eat. Her mother was currently in the medical bay running diagnostics on equipment that had been stressed during the alert. Working, always working, because that's what you did on an exploration vessel 12,000 light years from home. You worked or you went insane from the emptiness. Mira was too young to work, too young to understand the full implications of what had happened yesterday, but old enough to be afraid. The mess hall door hissed open. Captain Sarah Thorne entered carrying a cup of coffee that was probably 3 hours old and reheated twice. She spotted Mira, immediately altered her course, and sat down across from the girl without asking permission. That oatmeal looks like it's fighting back, Sarah observed. Mira managed a small smile. It tastes like wall insulation. How do you know what wall insulation tastes like? Engineer Rodriguez dared me to try it once. Sarah raised an eyebrow. And this is worse. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Around them, the mess hall slowly filled with crew members grabbing breakfast before their shifts. Quiet conversations, the clink of utensils, the hiss of the coffee dispenser. Normal sounds, routine sounds, everything was normal, except nothing was normal. Captain, Mira's voice was small. Are they going to come back? Those shipped. Sarah set down her coffee cup. Her gray eyes met Mira's brown ones with absolute directness. Yes, sweetheart, they're going to come back. Most adults would have lied, would have offered false reassurance, would have said everything was fine, don't worry, go play. Sarah Thorne had been a crisis negotiator for 15 years, before she became a starship captain. She had learned that children could handle truth better than lies. That fear of the unknown was worse than fear of the known. But here's what you need to understand, Mira. When they come back, it won't be to hurt us. It'll be to talk, to understand, to figure out if we can be friends or if we need to be something else. What if they want to be enemies? Sarah considered the question seriously. Then we'll handle it, the same way we handled it yesterday, by being smarter, faster, and more prepared than they expect. You knew about them, Mira said. It wasn't a question. You knew they were out there. That's why you weren't scared. I knew they existed. I knew their empire was in this region, but I didn't know they'd find us so quickly, or that they'd be quite so aggressive about trying to capture us. Did you lie to us, to the crew? Sarah shook her head. I withheld information. There's a difference.
The anomaly grows. We must act.
Our defenses are mobilizing.
It changes
Time
how
is
you
short.
behave.
Alliance is essential.
Makes you act
Agreed.
differently.
We stand with you.
And in this case, we needed to appear innocent, curious, harmless, so that when we revealed we weren't harmless, it would have maximum impact. That still sounds like lying. You're right, it does. Mira blinked. She had expected an argument, an explanation. Adults always had explanations for why they did things that seemed wrong. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you earlier, Sarah continued. I'm sorry you were scared yesterday, but I promise you, Mira, everything I do is to keep you and everyone else on this ship safe, even when it means making choices that feel wrong. The girl pushed her oatmeal away. My mom says you're the best captain in the fleet, that you used to talk down bad people on Earth, people who wanted to hurt others. I did. Did you ever have to lie to them? Every single time. And that was okay. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Through the mess hall viewport, stars streaked past in their faster-than-light distortion. Somewhere out there, the Zalkari Empire was reeling from an encounter that had shattered their assumptions about the galaxy. Let me tell you about a boy named Jonah, Sarah said quietly. The memory came back sharp and clear, the way traumatic memories always did. Chicago. 7 years ago. The crisis years when Earth was tearing itself apart over resources, territory, and old hatreds that refused to die. Sarah had been 35. Still with the crisis negotiation unit, still believing she could save everyone. The school was called Lincoln Elementary, 300 students, 20 teachers. One armed insurgent who had lost his family to a government airstrike and decided the children of government officials should pay the price. His name was Marcus Reeves, 42 years old, former teacher himself, radicalized by grief and propaganda. Standing in a classroom with 20 children and enough explosives to bring down the building, Sarah had talked to him for 6 hours. Built rapport, established trust, convinced him she understood his pain. She did understand, actually. That was the terrible part. She understood exactly what drove a good man to do monstrous things, understood the logic that led from personal tragedy to mass violence. But understanding didn't mean accepting. She had gotten him to release children in groups, 2 here, 5 there, negotiating each release like a separate victory. By hour 5, only 7 children remained, including Jonah Matthews, 7 years old, glasses, freckles, a quiet kid who loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist. Sarah had made eye contact with Jonah through the classroom window, had mouthed, "It's going to be okay." That's when the tactical team decided they had a clean shot. 1 bullet, through the reinforced window, through Marcus Reeves' skull. Problem solved, except for the dead man switch wired to his heart rate monitor, except for the explosives that detonated the moment his pulse stopped, except for 7-year-old Jonah Matthews, who was standing 3 feet away when the device went off. Sarah had been the first
The
one
anomaly
through the
grows.
breach,
We must act.
had
Our
pulled
defenses are
Jonah from the
mobilizing.
rubble
Time is
herself,
short.
Alliance
had
is
held
essential.
him while
Agreed.
he bled out
We
from
stand with
shrapnel
you.
wounds, had listened to him ask for his mother in a voice that got quieter and quieter until it stopped. His last words were, "Did I do good, miss? I was brave, right?" "You were so brave," Sarah had whispered. "The bravest." Then his eyes went empty, and she was holding a body instead of a boy. The tactical team got commendations. 6 children survived. Jonah's mother killed herself 3 months later, and Sarah resigned 6 months after that, applying to the United Earth Exploration Service, requesting assignment to the furthest mission available, away from Earth, away from the crisis years, away from the memory of a boy who died because someone decided violence was faster than patience. "I couldn't save him," Sarah said, her voice still quiet. "I tried. I negotiated for 6 hours. I got 13 children out safely, but I failed to save Jonah. And that failure taught me something important." "What?" Mira whispered. "That sometimes the hard choice is the right choice. That taking time, being patient, working through problems slowly. It feels wrong when you want fast results. But fast results get people killed." Sarah met Mira's eyes again. "Yesterday I could have told the Zalkari everything immediately. Could have transmitted all our data, all our knowledge, all our capabilities in one big information dump. It would have been faster, easier, more straightforward. But it would have made them more afraid," Mira said slowly. "Exactly. And fear makes people do violent things. So instead I gave them just enough information that makes them curious. Just enough to make them want to talk instead of shoot. It takes longer. It's more complicated. But it keeps people alive." Mira thought about this. At 9 years old, the complexities of interstellar diplomacy were beyond her. But she understood fear. She understood the difference between adults who lied to make themselves feel better and adults who withheld truth to protect others. "Thank you for keeping me safe," she said finally. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed the girl's hand once. Brief, warm. "Always, little one. Always." The mess hall door opened again. Commander Marcus Webb entered, spotted Sarah, and headed directly toward her table. His expression was carefully neutral, but Sarah had known him for 8 years. She could read the tension in his shoulders. "Captain, sorry to interrupt. We have an incoming transmission. Priority channel. It's from Sanctuary Station." Sarah stood, smoothing her uniform automatically. "Acknowledge, Commander." "Mira, finish your breakfast. Or at least throw it in the recycler so your mother doesn't know you wasted it." Mira managed a real smile this time. "Yes, ma'am." As Sarah followed Webb toward the bridge, she heard Mira humming softly behind her. The lullaby. The one from yesterday. The sound of a child choosing courage over fear. It was the best thing Sarah had heard all morning. The transmission from Sanctuary Station was audio only, which told Sarah 2 things immediately.
"The anomaly grows.
First,
We must
the sender
act.
wanted
Our defenses
some
are
privacy.
mobilizing.
Time is
Second,
short.
they were
Alliance
nervous.
is essential.
Agreed.
USS
We stand
Pathfinder.
with you.
This is Station Master Kale of Sanctuary Station. I hope this message finds you well. I have received an unusual request." Kale's voice carried the translator's synthetic quality, but underneath, Sarah could hear genuine anxiety. Sanctuary Station was neutral territory operated by a coalition of independent merchants who made their living by staying out of political conflicts. Hosting a meeting between humanity and the Zalkari Empire was very much a political conflict. "War Marshal Draven of the Zalkari military has contacted me," Kale continued. "He requests a formal meeting, on my station, with your representatives, to discuss, and I quote, terms of peaceful coexistence." Sarah exchanged glances with Webb. The commander's eyebrows rose fractionally. "He's bringing 50 ships as an escort," Kale added. 50, to a diplomatic meeting. "Captain Thorne, I've been running this station for 40 cycles, and I've never seen anything like this. The Zalkari don't negotiate, they dictate." "But they're asking to negotiate now," Sarah said quietly. "Yes. And frankly, Captain, it's terrifying. Half my staff want to evacuate before you arrive. The other half want to charge admission to watch. I'm asking you, as one professional to another, is this going to result in my station becoming a debris field?" Sarah considered her response carefully. "Station Master Kael, I give you my word that humanity has no hostile intentions towards Sanctuary Station or any neutral parties. We came to explore, not conquer." "That's not what the Zalkari say." Marshal Draven transmitted Battlegroup Hammerfall's combat footage. "You disabled 16 warships in 6 minutes, Captain. That's not exploration. That's terrifying precision. We defended ourselves when threatened, nothing more. We made our point without unnecessary killing." "Unnecessary killing, you make it sound clinical." "War is clinical when you do it right, messy when you do it wrong. We prefer to do things right." Kale made a sound that might have been nervous laughter. Captain Thorne, who are you people? We're Explorer's Station Master, who happen to be very, very good at defending ourselves when necessary. Now, will you host this meeting or not? Another pause. Sarah could almost hear Kale calculating risks, weighing profits against dangers. Yes, he said finally. But Captain, I'm imposing strict protocols. No weapons in the conference hall. No more than 5 representatives per side. And the first sign of hostility, I'm venting the entire section to space. Understood. Perfectly reasonable. We'll arrive in 36 hours. And Station Master? Thank you, this takes courage. Don't thank me yet. If this goes badly, my station becomes a historical footnote. The place where human-Zalkari relations turned into a shooting war. It won't come to that. How can you be sure to pray? Sarah smiled, though Kale couldn't see it. Because we've been planning this moment for 200 years.
The anomaly grows.
We know
We must
exactly
act.
Our
what we're
defenses are
doing.
mobilizing.
Time
The
is short.
transmission
Alliance
ended.
is
Webb
essential.
stood at her
Agreed.
shoulder,
We
arms
stand with
crossed.
you.
200 years of planning. Are we really that prepared? We'd better be, Sarah said. Because if this goes wrong, it won't just be our lives on the line. It'll be every human in this region of space. The Zalkari will hunt down all 12 exploration vessels. They'll trace our trajectory back to Earth. And they'll make sure humanity never threatens them again. No pressure then? None at all. Sarah moved to the navigation console. Plot a course for Sanctuary Station. Best speed. I want to arrive before Draven so we can assess the environment and establish our position. Aye, Captain. And our delegation. Who are you taking? Sarah thought about diplomatic protocols, about power dynamics, about the message every choice would send. You obviously, Dr. Frost for scientific consultation, Lieutenant Okoye for communications, and, she paused, and Mira Kellaway. Webb's expression went carefully blank. Captain, with respect, bringing a 9-year-old child to a high-stakes diplomatic negotiation shows them we're not warriors, we're families, parents, people with children we want to protect. Or it shows we're willing to use children as shields. The Zalkari have strong family bonds, Marcus. I've read the cultural reports. Bloodlines matter to them. Legacy, the continuation of their species through generations. Draven just lost his nephew in our encounter. A 19-year-old kid on his first assignment. She moved closer, her voice dropping. We bring Mira, we make a statement. We're not heartless tactical geniuses who calculate battles like chess games. We're people who care about children, who grieve when they die, who want them to have futures worth living. Webb nodded slowly. You really think that will work? I think it's our best chance, because the alternative is arriving with a purely military delegation, which sends the message that we're warriors first, diplomats second. That's not the humanity I want them to see. And if Draven sees it as weakness, if he thinks we're soft, Sarah's expression hardened, then he'll learn the difference between being soft and choosing not to be hard, between capability and willingness. We've already proven we can fight. Now we prove we prefer not to. The Pathfinder's course to Sanctuary Station would take 36 hours at maximum sustainable velocity. Enough time to prepare, to rehearse, to ensure everyone understood their roles, and enough time for things to go wrong. 20 hours into the journey in the depths of engineering, Section 7 Alpha, Devin Rast noticed something that would change everything. Devin was 36 years old, though he looked older. 8 years in space did that to you. The constant background radiation. The artificial gravity that never quite felt right. The stress of keeping a starship running with limited resources and no support. He had twin daughters back on Earth, Lily and Rose, 10 years old
The anomaly
now.
grows. We must
Brilliant and
act.
beautiful
Our defenses
and
are
completely
mobilizing.
unaware
Time is
their
short.
father
Alliance
was
is
12,000
essential.
light
Agreed.
years away.
We stand with you.
His wife sent videos every month through the Quantum Relay Network, updates on school friends' life. The videos were 4 years old by the time they reached him due to time dilation effects from relativistic travel. He watched his daughters grow up in bursts, jumping from 6 to 7 to 8 in monthly increments that felt like someone was fast-forwarding through his life. The last video had shown them at their 10th birthday party, blowing out candles, laughing, asking when Daddy was coming home. Soon, his wife had said in the video, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Daddy will be home soon. But soon was still 8 more years of mission time, and 8 years in space could feel like eternity. Right now, Devin was focused on something more immediate than homesickness. The power relay junction in Section 7 Alpha was fluctuating. Small variations. Nothing critical, but wrong. The kind of wrong that said something had been damaged during the combat alert and that damage was spreading through the system like cancer. Castellan, he called over his shoulder. I'm seeing instability in the plasma conduits. You getting the same readings? Dr. Lyra Castellan. Mira's mother checked her diagnostic panel. She was here because engineering overlapped with medical. In this section, shared life support systems, shared environmental controls. When one failed, both departments responded. Confirmed. Looks like microfractures from the combat maneuvers. The system compensated initially, but now it's degrading. The fractures are spreading along the stress lines. We need to reroute before it fails completely. Otherwise, we lose shield coverage on the port quarter. Can it wait until we reach Sanctuary Station? We're less than 20 hours out. Devon ran the calculations in his head. Engineer's instinct honed over years of keeping fragile systems running in hostile environments. He visualized the stress patterns, the failure propagation, the cascade effect that would occur when the weakest point finally gave way. No, it'll cascade in about 12 hours. We need to fix it now or we'll be arriving at the most important diplomatic meeting in human history with compromised shields. Lyra sighed. Of course we will. Nothing's ever simple. They worked together, routing replacement conduits, bypassing damaged sections, reinforcing weak points. It was delicate work, the kind that required two people with steady hands and complete trust in each other. Devon had known Lyra for 8 years. They had served together since the Pathfinder launched. She had delivered medical care when he broke his arm during a system malfunction in year 3. He had jury-rigged her daughter's birthday present when the fabricator malfunctioned in year 5. They were friends. The kind of friends you made when you were stuck on a ship with limited crew, limited resources, and unlimited distance from home. How's Mira handling everything? Devon asked as he welded a connection point. The plasma torch hissed metal flowing like liquid under the intense heat. Better than I expected. Captain Thorne talked to her this morning. Seems to have helped. Thorne's
the
good at
anomaly
that.
grows. We must
Reading
act.
people,
Our defenses are
knowing what they need
mobilizing.
to
Time
hear.
is short.
Alliance is essential.
She's good at a lot
Agreed.
of things.
We stand with you.
Lyra paused in her work. Devon, did you know about the observation program? About us watching the Zalkari for 200 years? Devon was quiet for a moment. His hands continued their work, welding, testing, sealing, but his mind was elsewhere. I suspected, he said finally. Some of the mission parameters didn't make sense otherwise. We were told this was pure exploration, but our weapon systems were too sophisticated, our stealth capabilities too advanced, our tactical databases too comprehensive. And you're okay with it. Being kept in the dark. We weren't kept in the dark. We were given incomplete information for operational security. There's a difference. Devon finished the weld and moved to the next connection point. If I'd known we were entering potentially hostile space, I would have been more paranoid, more careful. Might have triggered their sensors with my caution. This way we seemed innocent, harmless, until we disabled 16 warships in 6 minutes. Devon smiled grimly. Yeah, until that. He positioned the plasma torch at the next junction. This one was trickier, a connection point where 3 conduits met, creating complex stress patterns. Required precise temperature control, exact timing, steady hands. You ever think about going home? Lyra asked quietly. About seeing your girls again. Every single day, every single hour. Devon's voice was thick with emotion he usually kept buried. But I also think about what we're doing out here. About first contact. About building bridges between species. About making sure my daughters inherit a galaxy where humans aren't alone. Aren't afraid. He activated the plasma torch. The junction point began to glow. I want them to grow up in a universe where alien doesn't automatically mean enemy. Yeah, where different species can work together, learn from each other, build something better than what we had on Earth during the crisis years. That's a beautiful dream, Devon. It's not a dream. It's why I'm here. Why we're all here. To make it real. The junction point reached optimal temperature. Devon began the delicate process of fusing the 3 conduits together. Metal flowed, energy patterns stabilized. Connection integrity improved. Almost done. That's when the ship lurched. It wasn't much. A minor course correction barely perceptible to anyone not actively working with sensitive equipment. The kind of adjustment that happened dozens of times per day as the navigation system compensated for gravitational eddies in real space. But it happened at the exact moment Devon was connecting 3 live plasma conduits carrying enough energy to power a small city. His hand slipped. Just a fraction of a centimeter. Just enough. The plasma torch cut through the containment seal instead of the metal he was supposed to be welding. Superheated plasma erupted from the broken conduit. Devon had exactly 1 second to react. 1 second to decide between protecting himself or protecting the ship. between saving his
The
own
anomaly
life
grows.
or
We must
preventing a
act.
cascade
Our defenses are
failure
mobilizing.
that would
Time is
kill
short.
everyone
Alliance is
aboard.
essential.
He thought
Agreed.
of Lily
We
and
stand
Rose,
with you.
10 years old, waiting for Daddy to come home. He thought of Mira, 9 years old, singing lullabies in the observation dome. He thought of the 300 people aboard Pathfinder who were counting on engineering to keep them alive. 1 second, one choice. Devin Rask chose the ship. His body blocked the plasma jet, absorbed the superheated energy meant for the ship's vital systems. His engineering suit ablated immediately, designed to handle exactly this kind of emergency, but only for a few seconds. The outer layers vaporized, buying him precious moments to reach the emergency cutoff. His right hand, already burning, slapped the manual override. The plasma flow ceased, but it was too late for Devin. Lyra was screaming his name, but he couldn't hear her anymore. The pain was transcendent, all-consuming. The kind of pain that erased thought, erased self, left only animal awareness of damage beyond repair. Emergency systems activated. Blast doors slammed shut automatically, containing the incident to this section. Suppressant foam flooded the compartment, smothering any risk of secondary fires. By the time the foam cleared, Devin Rask was on the deck, his engineering suit melted to his skin, third-degree burns covering 60% of his body. The plasma conduits were sealed. The ship was safe. But Devin was dying. Lyra was already working medical training, overriding shock and horror. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, assessing damage, injecting pain suppressors. That couldn't possibly be enough. Medical Emergency Section 7 Alpha, she shouted into her communicator. I need a trauma team now. Full burn protocol. Move. Devin tried to speak, managed only a wet cough. Blood flecked his lips. Don't talk, you idiot. Don't move. Stay with me. Lyra's voice cracked. Her hands trembled as she worked. Did it work? Devin's voice was barely a whisper, each word agony. Yes, the conduits are sealed. The ship is fine. You saved it, you stupid, brave, wonderful fool. Good. His eyes started to close. Tell Lily and Rose. Daddy loves them. So much. You'll tell them yourself when you get home. Stay awake, Devin. That's an order. But his eyes closed anyway. Lyra felt for a pulse. Found it. Weak, thready, failing. The trauma team arrived in 90 seconds. They worked with desperate efficiency, stabilizing, treating, fighting the inevitable. But Devin's injuries were too severe. The plasma had cooked his internal organs before his suit's protection fully activated. By the time they reached him, his liver was failing, his kidneys shutting down, his heart barely beating. Dr. Kieran Frost, the ship's chief medical officer, made the assessment in 30 seconds. Transport him to medical bay. Do everything we can. But Lyra, prepare yourself. No, we can save him. We have the equipment, his injuries are beyond what we can treat here.
The anomaly
Even
grows.
if we
We
had
must
a full
act.
hospital,
Our defenses
even
are
if we were
mobilizing.
on
Time
Earth.
is short.
Alliance
Lyra,
is essential.
I'm sorry.
Agreed. We
They
stand
carried
with you.
Devin to the medical bay on a stretcher. Lyra walked beside him, holding his hand, whispering promises she couldn't keep. In the medical bay, under the harsh white lights, surrounded by instruments that could cure 1,000 ailments, but not this one, Devin Rask died. It took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of struggling, of fighting, of his body refusing to accept the inevitable. And then with Lyra holding his hand and Dr. Frost reading his vitals, Devin's heart stopped. Lyra started CPR immediately. Compressions, rescue breathing, desperate, futile effort. Lyra, he's gone, Frost said gently. No, we can restart his heart. We can, Lyra, look at me, and she looked up, tears streaming down her face. He's gone. There's nothing more we can do. I'm sorry. Lyra's hand stopped moving. She looked down at her friend's body, at the burns that covered him, at the face that would never smile again, at the father who would never see his daughters grow up. She collapsed into a chair, her entire body shaking with sobs. Captain Sarah Thorne stood outside the medical bay and watched through the transparent aluminum wall as Lyra mourned. Watched as the medical team covered Devin's body with a white sheet. Watched as they recorded the time of death in the official log. 0847 hours ship time, 20 hours before their arrival at Sanctuary Station. One crew member lost. One father who wouldn't be going home. One family destroyed. Sarah had seen death before, had held dying children in Chicago, had carried bodies from burning buildings, had delivered death notifications to families who would never be whole again. But it never got easier. After several minutes, she entered the medical bay quietly. Dr. Castellan. Lyra looked up with red-rimmed eyes. Captain, I'm so sorry for your loss. He saved the ship. Lyra's voice was hollow. The plasma would have cascaded through the entire power grid, We could have lost S.H.I.E.L.D.'s life support, everything, but he blocked it with his own body, chose the ship over himself. That makes him a hero. It makes him dead. Lyra's voice broke. He has daughters, Captain. Twin girls. Lily and Rose, 10 years old. Who's going to tell them their father isn't coming home? Sarah had no answer to that. Nothing she could say would make it better, so she said nothing. Just stood there bearing witness to grief. After a long moment, Lyra spoke again. This is your fault. Sarah didn't flinch. Yes. If you hadn't brought us here, if you hadn't confronted the Zelkari, then we would have been confronted by them eventually. And they would have been just as aggressive. This encounter was inevitable the moment we entered their territory. Then maybe we shouldn't have entered their territory. We're explorers, Doctor. Exploration means risk. Devon knew that. He accepted it when he signed on. Lyra stood in anger replacing grief. Don't you dare rationalize his death. Don't you dare make it sound acceptable. I'm not. There's nothing acceptable about losing crew.
The anomaly
Nothing
grows.
that makes
We must
this
act.
okay.
Our defenses
But we
are
can honor
mobilizing.
his
Time is
sacrifice
short.
by
Alliance
making
is
it mean
essential.
something.
Agreed. We
By
stand with
using
you.
this tragedy to build something better. How does his death build anything? Sarah moved closer. Her voice was gentle but firm. We're going to Sanctuary Station to meet with the Zelkari. We're going to negotiate. And when we do, we're going to tell them about Devon, about his sacrifice, about the cost of conflict, about why we fight so hard to avoid unnecessary deaths. And maybe, just maybe, that shared understanding of loss will help both sides choose peace. You're going to use him, use his death as a diplomatic tool. I'm going to honor him by showing his death mattered, that it prevented further bloodshed, that it opened a door to something better than endless war. That's not using him. That's remembering him correctly. Lyra stared at her captain for a long moment, then her shoulders sagged. Mira can't know. Not yet. I need time to find the right words, to figure out how to tell a 9-year-old that Uncle Devon isn't coming back. Take all the time you need. And Captain, when you meet with the Zelkari, when you tell them about Devon, tell them also about their casualty, the one we killed, Lieutenant Talvik. Sarah's expression softened. You know his name. I looked it up. 19 cycles old, equivalent to about 22 Earth years. First deep space assignment. Died when his restraints failed during combat maneuvers. War Marshal Draven's nephew. Why look it up? Because if we're going to mourn our dead, we should mourn theirs too. Otherwise, we're no better than the monsters we claim to be defending against. Otherwise, Devon's death means we're just another species that values our own lives over others. Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. This was why she had chosen this crew. This was why humanity might actually succeed where other species had failed. Because even in grief, even in anger, they could still see the humanity, the personhood in their enemies. I'll make sure Marshal Draven knows we grieve for his nephew, Sarah said quietly. That we understand his loss. That we recognize the cost on both sides. Will it matter to him? I don't know, but it's the right thing to do regardless. Lyra looked at Devon's body covered now with a white sheet that couldn't hide the shape of what had been a living, breathing man just minutes ago. I need to prepare his memorial file. His daughters should have something to remember him by. Videos, letters, something that explains who he was and why he chose to be out here. I'll help, whatever you need. What I need is my friend back, but I'll settle for making sure his death wasn't meaningless. Sarah left the medical bay with those words echoing in her mind. 2 casualties now, 1 human, 1 Zelkari, both young or young enough, both dying in conflicts they didn't start serving causes they believed in. Lieutenant Talvik, 19 cycles killed by accident during a battle he didn't choose. Engineer Devon Rask, 36 years killed by accident while protecting his ship. War was supposed to be about principles.
The anomaly grows.
About values,
We must act.
about
Our
defending
defenses
what
are
mattered.
mobilizing.
But
Time
it
is short.
always
Alliance
came
is
down to
essential.
individual
Agreed.
lives.
We stand with you.
Individual deaths, individual families left broken. Sarah had seen enough broken families in the crisis years, had held enough dying children, had delivered enough death notifications. She would not let that be humanity's legacy among the stars. Even if it meant bearing the weight of decisions that got good people killed. Even if it meant Devon's daughters would grow up without their father. Even if it meant carrying guilt that would never fully heal. Some burdens you carried because they were yours to bear. Because you were captain, because you had made choices that led to this moment. Sarah Thorne had made peace with that burden long ago, but that didn't make it any lighter. 6 hours later, Mira found her mother sitting alone in the observation dome, the same place where this had all started, the same place where Mira had been singing when the alarms went off. The stars beyond the crystal looked the same, infinite, uncaring, beautiful in their indifference. "Mom," Lyra turned. Her eyes were dry now, but still red. Her uniform was clean, the bloody one discarded and recycled. "Hey, sweetheart." Mira climbed into her mother's lap without asking permission. 9 years old was almost too old for that. Almost, but not quite. Something bad happened, didn't it? Lyra wrapped her arms around her daughter. "Yes." "Uncle Devin, how did you know?" "I heard the emergency alarm from engineering, and I saw him this morning at breakfast. He looked tired. He always looks tired when he's working on something important." Children always knew. There was no hiding death from them. You could delay the conversation, soften the words, but you couldn't hide the truth. "Uncle Devin was fixing the ship," Lyra said quietly, choosing each word with care. "Something went wrong. There was an accident with the plasma conduits. He got hurt very badly, and he didn't survive." Mira was quiet for a long time. Her small body was tense in her mother's arms. Then, like Jonah, Lyra's breath caught. "What do you know about Jonah?" "Captain Thorne told me. A boy who died because adults chose violence over patience. She said she still thinks about him every day." Devin's death wasn't like that. It was an accident, a terrible accident. But it still happened because we're out here, because we're doing this mission, because we met the Zalkari. Yes, another long silence. Mira watched the stars streak past. "Uncle Devin showed me pictures of his daughters once," she said finally. "The twins, Lily and Rose. They have red hair like him. They look nice." "They are nice. They're beautiful girls who love their father very much. Will they be okay?" It was the question adults asked children. Strange to hear it reversed, but Mira had always been perceptive beyond her years. "I don't know, sweetheart. Losing a parent it's one of the hardest things anyone can go through. But they have their mother and their family and people who will help
The anomaly
them.
grows.
They'll
We must
carry the
act.
pain
Our defenses
forever,
are mobilizing.
But they'll learn
Time
to
is
live
short.
with
Alliance is
it,
essential.
to honor
Agreed.
their father
We
by
stand
living
with
good
you.
lives. Like Captain Thorne. She still carries Jonah, but she keeps going. Yes, exactly like that. Mira shifted in her mother's lap, looking up at her face. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Lyra met her daughter's eyes, saw fear there, and courage, and trust that hadn't yet been broken by loss. "Yes, sweetheart, we're going to be okay." "How do you know?" "Because we have each other, because we have Captain Thorne, because we have a ship full of people who care about us, and because we're going to make sure Uncle Devin's sacrifice means something." How Twain, by making peace with the Zalkari, by showing them we're not monsters, by choosing to build instead of destroy, by proving that his death and the death of their officer, Lieutenant Tovek, they don't have to be the beginning of war. They can be the price we paid for peace. Mira considered this. At 9 years old, concepts like geopolitical diplomacy and interstellar relations were beyond her. But she understood kindness. She understood choosing good over evil. She understood that sometimes you had to pay prices to get things worth having. Captain Thorne says they lost someone too, Lieutenant Talvek, in the battle. That's right. So they're sad too. Yes, they're sad too. Then maybe we can be sad together. Maybe that's how we become friends, by understanding that both sides lost someone, that both sides hurt. Lyra felt tears threatening again. Not from grief this time, from pride, from awe at her daughter's simple wisdom, from the terrible recognition that Mira was growing up too fast, learning lessons that should wait for adulthood. Maybe it is, sweetheart. Maybe sharing grief is the first step to sharing hope. They sat together in the observation dome, watching the stars streak past, mother and daughter, grieving and hopeful, afraid and brave. Somewhere ahead, Sanctuary Station waited, along with 50 Zalkari warships, along with decisions that would shape humanity's future among the stars. But for now, in this moment, there was only this, a mother holding her child, finding comfort in the simplest of human connections. It would have to be enough. It would have to be everything. Because tomorrow the talking would begin, and everything would change. Sanctuary Station hung in space like a mechanical flower, its 6 rotating rings creating artificial gravity for dozens of different species requirements. The station had existed for 500 cycles, longer than most governments, surviving through strict neutrality and even stricter profit margins. Station Master Kyle stood in the docking control center and watched 2 fleets approach his station from opposite directions. From Spinward, the USS Pathfinder traveled alone, one small vessel carrying humanity's hopes. From Annie Spinward, 50 Zalkari warships moved in perfect formation. Dreadnoughts and cruisers arranged in a three-dimensional pattern that could reduce the station to atoms in seconds. This is either the beginning of a new era, Kale muttered to his second-in-command,
The anomaly
or the end of
grows.
my
We must
career.
act.
Our defenses are
Possibly
mobilizing.
both, his
Time is
second
short.
replied
Alliance is
helpfully.
essential.
Agreed.
Kale had
We
three
stand
eyes
with you.
arranged in a triangular pattern, giving him nearly 270-degree vision. Right now, all three eyes were tracking different displays simultaneously. Human approach vector, Zelkari fleet formation, station security status. The Pathfinder requested docking clearance first. Kale granted it to Bay 17, one of the larger berths designed for merchant vessels. The human ship glided into position with textbook precision, magnetic clamps engaging with barely a tremor. Professional, controlled. Exactly what Kale expected from a species that had defeated a Zelkari battle group. The Zelkari fleet maintained position at a respectful distance, 10,000 kilometers, close enough to respond to threats, far enough to appear non-threatening, intimidating but not aggressive. Kale had never seen the Zelkari do subtle before. Clear them for Bay 1 through Bay 12, he ordered, and activate all internal security protocols. I want eyes on every corridor, every junction, every potential flashpoint. If a single weapon is drawn anywhere on this station, I want to know about it instantly. Expecting trouble. I'm expecting a miracle if we all survive the next 48 hours with this station intact and my license to operate still valid. Captain Sarah Thorne emerged from the Pathfinder's airlock exactly 30 minutes after docking. She wore her dress uniform crisp and formal, with the small bronze star that marked her as a crisis years veteran positioned prominently on her chest. Behind her came Commander Webb, Dr. Frost, Lieutenant Okoye, and one small figure that made Cahill's three eyes widen in surprise. A human child. Mira Kellaway walked beside the captain, her small hand clasped in Sarah's larger one. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair in those same faded ribbons. Her eyes were won as she took in the alien architecture, the strange lighting, the merchants from a dozen species conducting business in the station's main concourse. She looked frightened. She looked brave. Kale met them in the reception area, performing his species' traditional greeting, a complex gesture involving all 6 of his manipulator tentacles. Sarah mimicked it as best she could with only 2 hands, which made Kale's central eye crinkle in what might have been amusement. Captain Thorne, welcome to Sanctuary Station. I see you've brought unexpected delegation members. Sarah's hand tightened slightly on Mira's. This is Mira Kellaway. She's here as an observer, a witness to what we hope will be a historic moment. And if Marshal Draven objects to a child's presence at a military diplomatic negotiation, then he can explain why children shouldn't witness peace negotiations while his fleet intimidates a neutral station with 50 warships. Kale's tentacles rippled in definite amusement this time. You're either very brave or very foolish, Captain Thorne. I've been called both, usually in the same sentence. The conference hall is prepared. I've set temperature to neutral gravity, to galactic standard atmosphere, to breathable for both your species. I've banned weapons, banned recording devices.
The anomaly
beyond
grows.
official
We must act.
documentation,
Our defenses are
and ban
mobilizing.
anything
Time is
that
short.
might
Alliance
escalate
is
tensions.
essential.
Agreed.
You have
We
my
stand
word,
with you.
Station Master. We're here to talk, not fight. I hope that's worth something. It is, to me at least. Kyle led them through the station's main concourse. Merchants paused in their trading to stare at the humans. Word had spread quickly about the battle, about the mysterious species that had humiliated the Zelkari Empire in 6 minutes. Everyone wanted to see these newcomers who had changed the galaxy's power dynamics in less time than it took to eat lunch. Mira pressed closer to Sarah as they walked, intimidated by the attention. The captain leaned down slightly. Remember what we talked about. You're here to watch and learn, not to be afraid. There are so many of them, Mira whispered, and they're all curious about you, about us. First impressions matter, so stand tall, show them humans aren't afraid. Mira straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin. It was a small gesture, but Sarah felt pride swell in her chest. Children learn courage from example, and this child had excellent examples all around her. They reached the conference hall exactly as the Zelkari delegation arrived from the opposite entrance. War Marshal Draven entered first. He was imposing even by Zelkari standards, nearly 3 meters tall, his forearms moving with controlled power, his crest fully extended in a display that was clearly meant to intimidate. Behind him came 4 officers, all in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the station's lighting. And beside Draven, looking smaller but no less intense, was Fleet Commander Zarketh. The 2 delegations faced each other across the conference hall. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The weight of history pressed down on that silence. 2 species, 2 civilizations. meeting for the first time not on a battlefield, but in a neutral space designed for dialogue. Sarah broke the silence. War Marshal Draven, Fleet Commander Zarketh, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Draven's six eyes tracked across the human delegation. Paused on Mira. His crest flattened slightly, confusion according to Sarah's cultural briefings. You bring a juvenile to military negotiations. I bring a witness to peace negotiations, Sarah corrected gently. There's a difference. This child is a liability, a distraction, inappropriate for matters of state. This child is named Mira Kellaway. She's 9 years old. She was aboard my ship when your forces attempted to capture us. She was frightened, confused. She didn't understand why strangers with weapons were threatening her home. Sarah moved forward slowly, still holding Mira's hand. I promised her that everything would be all right, that we would find a way to make peace. So yes, Marshal, I brought her here. Because promises to children matter. Because the future we're negotiating isn't just for us, it's for them. Draven's expression was unreadable to human eyes, but his crest remained flat, which Sarah's briefings suggested indicated consideration rather than aggression.
The anomaly grows. We must act.
Our defenses are mobilizing.
Time is short.
Alliance
They
is
too were
essential.
frightened by
Agreed.
your
We stand with
defensive
you.
actions. It wasn't an attack. It was self-defense against an attempt to forcibly board our ship. And the distinction may be irrelevant to frightened children. You're absolutely right, which is why we're here, to make sure their fear was temporary, not permanent, to build something better than endless conflict. Fleet Commander Zarketh spoke for the first time. His voice was quieter than Draven's, but carried an edge of intellect that suggested he was the more dangerous of the two. Captain Thorne, you claim peaceful intentions. Yet you disabled 16 warships in 6 minutes using tactics and technology we've never encountered. You possess comprehensive knowledge of our empire obtained through 2 centuries of covert surveillance. You've demonstrated the ability to bypass our most advanced defenses. He stepped forward, all 6 eyes focused on Sarah with laser intensity. These are not the actions of peaceful explorers. These are the actions of a species that planned very carefully how to defeat us. Sarah nodded. You're right, Commander. We did plan, very carefully. For 200 years, our unmanned probes watched your empire expand, watched you encounter new species, watched how you classified them, absorbed them, eliminated those who resisted. She gestured to the holographic projector in the center of the conference table. May I demonstrate? Kale, from his position by the door, nodded nervously. Sarah activated the projector. Images materialized in the air. Star charts, ship designs, tactical analysis. 200 years of observation compressed into visual form. We know you have 300 dreadnoughts in your fleet. We know your shields operate on gravitational principles that make them vulnerable to high-velocity kinetic weapons. We know your faster-than-light drives create subspace ripples we can track from thousands of light-years away. We know your government is a hereditary monarchy with a high council that holds significant power. The images continued flowing. Government structures, economic patterns, cultural practices. We know you're dealing with internal tensions as expansion slows and resources become scarce. We know there are political factions that advocate for continued aggressive expansion and factions that recognize the current model is unsustainable. Zarketh's crest was fully extended now. Stage 4 respect. You know, everything about us. Not everything, Sarah said, but enough. And Commander, here's the important part. We could have used this knowledge to destroy you. We had 2 centuries to plan a devastating first strike, to position weapons, to coordinate an attack that would cripple your empire before you even knew we existed. She met his eyes directly. We didn't. Why not? Draven's question was sharp, probing, because we're not conquerors. We're explorers who learn from our own history. On Earth, we have painful stories about first contact. Stories about indigenous peoples meeting technologically superior civilizations. Those stories almost always end in genocide.
The anomaly grows. We
in
must
cultural
act.
destruction,
Our defenses are
in the
mobilizing.
strong
Time is short.
crushing the
Alliance
weak
is
simply
essential.
because
Agreed.
they could.
We stand with you.
Sarah's expression grew distant for a moment. We nearly destroyed ourselves during the crisis years. Wars over resources, territory, ideology. We came so close to extinction that we could see it from where we stood. And when we finally pulled back from that edge, when we finally chose cooperation over conflict, we promised ourselves something. She looked directly at both Draven and Zarketh and Markas. We promised we would never be the species that crushes others, but we also promised we would never be crushed ourselves. So we found a middle path. Knowledge, preparation, the ability to defend ourselves without seeking dominance. You speak of middle paths. Draven said, his voice hard. But you killed my nephew, Lieutenant Talvek, 19 cycles old, his first deep space assignment. He died because of your self-defense. The conference hall went absolutely silent. This was the moment Sarah had been preparing for. The moment when shared grief would either build a bridge or widen the chasm. I know, she said softly. Lieutenant Talvek died when his restraints failed during combat maneuvers. It was an accident, a tragedy. And I am deeply, profoundly sorry for your loss, Marshal Draven. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. We also lost someone. Engineer Devin Rask, 36 years old, father of twin daughters Lily and Rose, 10 years old. He died yesterday repairing damage from our encounter with your forces. A plasma conduit accident. He blocked the leak with his own body to save the ship. Mira's hand tightened in Sarah's. The girl's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but she remained silent. Strong. 2 families, Sarah continued. 2 losses. 2 casualties in a conflict neither of them started. Your nephew didn't choose to attack us. My engineer didn't choose to die protecting us. But both of them served faithfully. Both of them believed in their missions. Both of them deserve to be remembered. Draven's crest was completely flat now. His forearms hung at his sides. You mourn your casualties and ours. We mourn all unnecessary death, Marshal. Even enemy casualties, especially those who died through accident rather than malice. Lieutenant Talvek was someone's son, someone's nephew, someone who had a future that was stolen by circumstances beyond his control. That is unusual. That is human. Zarketh leaned forward. Stage 5 beginning alliance consideration. Captain Thorne, you mentioned multiple ships. Multiple human vessels making contact across the galaxy. How extensive is this network you're building? Sarah manipulated the holographic display. The star chart expanded, showing 12 vectors spreading from a single point. 12 exploration vessels launched 40 years ago from Earth, each traveling in different directions towards civilizations we'd identified through our unmanned observation network. The USS Meridian contacted the Tyrian Federation 4 months ago. They've established cultural exchange
The
programs.
anomaly grows. We must act.
USS
Our
Venture
defenses
made
are mobilizing.
contact with
Time is
the
short.
Borderless
Alliance is
Collective.
essential.
They're
Agreed.
negotiating
We stand
trade
with you.
agreements. The USS Wayfinder is coordinating with the nomadic clans. The display continued updating. More ships, more contacts, more connections spreading across the galaxy like neural pathways forming in a brain. We're not building an empire, Sarah said. We're building a network, relationships, friendships, because we learned something important in our history after nearly destroying ourselves. Cooperation achieves more than conquest. Trust builds more than fear. Diversity strengthens more than uniformity. 12 ships, Zarketh murmured. Stage 5 full alliance consideration, spreading across known space, each one as capable as the Pathfinder. Each one designed for exploration and self-defense. Yes, each one crewed by people who chose to spend decades away from home, away from family, to seek understanding with species we'd never met. And if we had destroyed the Pathfinder, Draven asked, what would the other 11 have done? Sarah's expression hardened. You would have learned that humanity is very, very good at coordinated warfare. We've had 3,000 years of practice fighting each other. We know every trick, every tactic, every way to make war terrible, inefficient, and devastating. She paused, letting that sink in. But we chose to stop. After the crisis years, after millions dead, and our homeworld scarred, we chose to look up at the stars and say, not there, not again. We chose exploration over exploitation. We chose to be better than our worst impulses. And if we choose not to accept your friendship, Draven asked, then we'll respect that choice. We'll mark your territory on our charts, maintain distance, and avoid further contact. We'll trade if you're willing, ignore each other if you're not. But Marshall, understand this clearly. Sarah's voice became steel wrapped in velvet. We will not be conquered. We will not submit. We will not allow ourselves to be classified, cataloged, and absorbed into your empire. If you force us to fight, we will fight, and we will win. Not because we're stronger, you have more ships, more resources, more territory, but because we're more motivated, because we've already decided that freedom matters more than survival. The conference hall was silent again, but this time the silence felt different, charged, potential rather than hostile. Zarketh and Draven exchanged glances. Some communication passed between them in body language Sarah couldn't fully read. Finally, Draven spoke. You speak well, Captain Thorne. You understand power. You understand sacrifice. You understand the balance between strength and restraint. These are qualities the Zolkari respect. He moved to the conference table, his forearms gesturing formally. I am authorized by the High Council to offer preliminary discussions on diplomatic recognition, not alliance, not submission, but acknowledgement that humanity exists, possesses significant capabilities, and deserves formal consideration as an independent galactic presence. That's all we ask, Marshal. However, Draven continued, we must understand your full capabilities. You speak of 12 ships. Are there more hidden fleets, military installations preparing for invasion? No hidden fleets, no secret armadas, just 12 exploration vessels operating independently across this galactic region. And our home world Earth, which has its own defensive forces but hasn't expanded beyond its star system. You're doing, why not? If you possess such capabilities, why remain confined? Because we're still healing from the crisis years, Marshal, still learning to live together peacefully. Earth has 200 nations, separate governments, cultures, languages. For most of our history, we fought each other. Only in the last century have we learned cooperation. Sarah's voice softened. We won't export our conflicts to the stars until we've resolved them at home. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. We know what we're capable of. We know how dangerous we can be. So we choose carefully when and where to use that capability. Zarketh's crest rose slightly in what Sarah had learned to recognize as approval. That is admirably restrained. Few species with your capabilities would exercise such discipline. We learned discipline the hard way, Commander, through nearly destroying ourselves. The negotiations continued for another 2 hours. Details were discussed, protocols established. Preliminary agreements made about communication channels, territorial boundaries, and neutral zones for future contact. Through it all, Mira sat quietly beside Sarah, watching, learning, seeing how conflicts could be resolved through words rather than weapons, seeing how two species that had every reason to be enemies could choose to be something else. And in that conference hall, on a neutral station between the stars, the foundation was laid for something that might become friendship, or might become humanity's greatest mistake. Time would tell. But for now, words were replacing weapons, understanding was replacing fear, and a 9-year-old girl was witnessing history. The explosion happened during the second day of negotiations. Sarah was mid-sentence explaining humanity's approach to shared scientific research when the station shuddered. Not violently, not catastrophically, but enough to trigger instincts honed during the crisis years. Emergency klaxons screamed. The conference hall's lights flickered. Warning messages flashed across every surface. Breach in Section 14, Kale's voice crackled over the station's intercom system. All personnel to emergency stations, sealed bulkhead protocols activated. Draven was on his feet instantly, his forearms reaching for weapons that weren't there confiscated at the entrance per Kale's protocols. What's happening? He demanded. Unknown, Sarah said, already moving toward Mira. Her mind was cataloging possibilities. Accident, malfunction, attack. But we need to... The second explosion was closer. Much closer. The conference hall's reinforced viewport cracked. Not shattered, the crystal was designed to survive incredible stress, but enough that fracture lines spread like spider webs across the transparent surface. Decompression alarms added their voice to the chaos. Mira, Lyra's voice came from the doorway. She had been waiting outside during negotiations, not officially part of the delegation, but close enough to intervene if medical support was needed. She ran toward her daughter just as the third explosion hit. This one was directly above the conference hall. The ceiling buckled, support struts groaned. The crystal viewport finally gave way with a sound like the world breaking, and atmosphere began venting into space with a scream that drowned out everything else. Emergency force fields activated immediately. Sanctuary Station's backup systems were excellent, but not before the pressure drop sent everyone tumbling. Sarah grabbed Mira, pulling her close, using her own body as a shield. Around her, both delegations scrambled for safety. Zelkari and human alike, thrown together by physics that didn't care about species. Terrorists, Kale's voice crackled through damaged speakers. Extremist faction Zelkari hardliners. They've boarded the station. They're targeting the conference hall. A fourth explosion, this one inside the hall itself. Someone had smuggled plasma charges past security. Someone who wanted these negotiations to fail. Someone willing to kill to prevent peace. Sarah saw it happening in slow motion. Saw the charge detonate near the ceiling. Saw debris falling, metal and crystal, and superheated fragments directly toward where she crouched with Mira. Saw Lyra running. Mom, no. Mira's scream was drowned out by the explosion's aftermath. Lara Castellan threw herself over her daughter, over Sarah. Her body absorbed the impact of falling debris. Metal shrapnel, crystal shards, superheated gas that would have killed them both. The force field stabilized. The debris stopped falling. The decompression halted as emergency systems sealed the breaches. But it was too late. Lyra lay on the deck, her back torn open by shrapnel. Blood pooled beneath her, spreading across the polished floor in a pattern that would haunt Sarah's nightmares forever. Her breathing was wet, labored, the sound of lungs punctured by metal. "Mom." Mira's voice was very small, so small, like the universe had shrunk to just this moment, just this horror. "Mom, get up. Please get up." Sarah gently moved debris from Lyra's body. Her crisis negotiator training, her medical cross-training, told her everything she needed to know with a single glance. Lyra was dying. "Mira," Lyra's whisper was barely audible over the station's alarms. Her hand found her daughter's face trembling. "Brave, one. Don't talk, Mom. Help is coming. Dr. Frost is right there. He's going to fix you." "No, sweetheart. He's not." Dr. Frost was already kneeling beside them, medical kit open. But one look at the wound told him what Sarah already knew. The shrapnel had severed Lyra's spine, had punctured both lungs, had done damage that even a full trauma center couldn't repair. Not in time. Not ever. "I'm sorry," Frost said quietly to Sarah. "There's nothing." "I know." Sarah knelt beside Lyra, still holding Mira close. Around them, security teams poured into the conference hall. Both delegations watched in stunned silence as the horror unfolded. "Lyra," Sarah said softly, "your daughter is safe. You saved her. You saved both of us." "Good." Lyra's breathing was deteriorating rapidly. "Promise. Promise I'll take care of her. I promise. Make it mean something. Devin, me. Make it matter." "I will. I swear to you, Lyra. Your sacrifice will matter." Lyra's eyes found her daughter's face one last time. Blood bubbled at her lips. Her voice was fading. "I love you, Mira. So much. Be brave. Be kind. Be—" Her hand went limp. The medical monitors that Frost had attached flatlined with a sound that cut through the chaos, a single eternal tone that marked the end of everything. Mira didn't scream, didn't cry. She just stared at her mother's body with eyes that had seen too much, understood, too much lost, too much for a 9-year-old to bear. "Mom," the word was barely a whisper. "Mommy, please wake up. Please, I'll be good. I'll eat my oatmeal. I'll do my homework. Just please wake up." Sarah pulled the girl close, letting her feel a heartbeat that wasn't her mother's, letting her know she wasn't alone in this moment, even though she was more alone than she'd ever been. Around them, the conference hall was silent, except for the hiss of emergency systems and the quiet sobbing of a 9-year-old child who had just lost everything. War Marshal Draven stood apart from his delegation, watching the human captain comfort the orphaned child. His crest was completely flat grief according to his species' physiological responses. His forearms hung limp. He had seen death before, had caused death, had watched warriors fall in battle, and considered it honorable sacrifice. But this was different. This was a mother dying to protect her child, a civilian casualty in a conflict she hadn't chosen, a sacrifice made not for glory or empire but for love. And it was caused by his own people. "Fleet commander," he said quietly to Zarketh. "This attack, who was responsible?" Preliminary reports indicate a splinter faction marshal, the Steel Fang Coalition extremists who see these negotiations as betrayal of imperial purity. They've been growing in political influence over the past 10 cycles. Zarketh's six eyes tracked security footage on his personal display. They smuggled plasma charges aboard during the standard docking procedures. 3 operatives, all Zolkari, all military veterans who believe compromise is weakness. "Find them," Draven said. His voice was cold, hard, final. "Marshal, find whoever did this. I want them identified, arrested, and tried according to imperial law. This was not honorable combat. This was murder of civilians. This was cowardice disguised as patriotism." Zarketh's crest rose in surprise. "You would prosecute our own people for attacking our enemies." "They are not enemies," Draven's voice cracked like a whip. "They are potential allies who came here in good faith, who brought a child as a symbol of their peaceful intentions. And our extremists murdered a civilian, a doctor, a mother." He moved closer to where Sarah still held the sobbing child. "This is not the Zelkari way. This is not honor. This is terrorism, and it will be punished." Draven approached slowly, carefully. He had never spoken to a human child before, had never needed to offer condolences to an alien species. But grief was universal. Captain Thorne, Sarah looked up. Her face was composed, but her eyes held a grief that transcended species barriers. Marshal, I am sorry. The words felt inadequate. For your loss, for this attack. It was not authorized, not condoned by the High Council or the Emperor. This is murder, and those responsible will face justice. Can justice bring her back? No, but it can ensure her death has consequences, that those responsible face punishment, that this atrocity is not repeated. Sarah nodded slowly. Justice, not revenge. Is there a difference? Revenge is about making yourself feel better. Justice is about making sure it doesn't happen again, about consequences that serve a purpose beyond satisfying anger. Draven's crest rose slightly. You speak of justice while holding an orphaned child. Most species would speak of revenge, of retaliation. Most species haven't spent 3,000 years perfecting the art of revenge only to discover it solves nothing, that it creates cycles of violence that echo across generations. Sarah stood carefully still, holding Mira. The girl clung to her like a lifeline, her face buried in Sarah's uniform. We came here to build peace, Marshal. 3 people have died in the process. Lieutenant Talvek, Engineer Rask, Dr. Castellan. 3 families destroyed, 3 lives ended, 3 futures stolen. She looked around the damaged conference hall. We can let their deaths mean nothing. We can go back to our corners, prepare for war, and ensure that 3 becomes 3,000 becomes 3 million. Or we can honor them by making sure they were the last casualties, the last sacrifices, the price we paid for choosing something better than endless conflict. You would continue negotiations, Draven asked. After this, especially after this, because if we stop now, we prove the terrorists right. We prove that violence works. That fear is stronger than hope. Sarah's voice hardened with determination. I will not give them that victory. Mira lifted her head slightly. Her eyes were red, her voice hoarse, but her words were clear. Captain Thorne is right, she whispered. Mom said, she said, make it matter. Don't let her die for nothing. Mira, she's dead because someone wants us to be enemies. Someone wants us to hate each other. But that's not what Mom wanted. She wanted me to see aliens as people, to learn from them, to build something better. The girl's voice broke, but she continued. So that's what we have to do. Otherwise she died for nothing. And I can't let that be true. Draven knelt, bringing himself to eye level with the human child. Up close, she was so fragile, so small. Nothing like the robust Zalkari juveniles who could survive falls that would shatter human bones. But her eyes held a strength that transcended physical size. Your mother was brave, he said quietly. She died protecting you. Among my people, this is the highest honor. The sacrifice of the strong for those we love. She wasn't weak, Mira said fiercely. She was a doctor. She saved lives. She helped people. I did not mean to suggest weakness. I meant... Draven struggled to find words in a language not his own to express concepts that didn't translate easily. Among my people, we believe the strongest warriors are those who protect others. Your mother was a warrior in the truest sense, and her sacrifice will be remembered. He stood addressing both Sarah and his own delegation. I am ashamed. These terrorists claim to act in the Empire's interests, but they act only in service of fear and hatred. They kill to prevent understanding. They destroy to maintain ignorance and division. His crest extended fully a declaration, a commitment. This is not who we are. This is not who we will be. Captain Thorne, I formally request that we continue these negotiations. Not despite this attack, but because of it. We must prove that peace is stronger than terror. That understanding can survive violence. Sarah studied him for a long moment, saw genuine shame, genuine determination, genuine evolution from the proud warrior who had arrived 2 days ago. Agreed, Marshal, but first we honor our dead, all of them, together. Explain. A memorial service, a joint ceremony. We remember Lieutenant Talvek. We remember Engineer Rask. We remember Dr. Castellan. We acknowledge the cost of conflict and commit publicly to ensuring no more names are added to that list. Zarkay spoke up. This is highly irregular, Captain. Joint memorial ceremonies between species who are not allied are exactly what we need right now, Sarah interrupted. We can't pretend our losses are separate. We can't maintain the illusion that their deaths happened in isolation from each other. We grieve together or we learn nothing from their sacrifices. Draven considered. Then slowly he crossed his forearms over his chest in the traditional salute, the gesture reserved for honoring the fallen. It will be done. Tomorrow in the station's memorial garden. Representatives from both delegations. Full military honors for all three casualties. Thank you, Marshal. As the delegations began to disperse, coordinating with station security to clear the damaged conference hall and identify the attackers, Sarah held Mira close and whispered promises she hoped she could keep. Promises about justice. Promises about peace. Promises about making sure her mother's death meant something. But even as she made those promises, Sarah felt the weight of them crushing down. 3 deaths, 3 families destroyed, 3 prices paid for a peace that might still fail. And somewhere in the shadows of Sanctuary Station, the surviving extremists plotted their next move, determined to ensure that understanding never took root. The bridge between species was being built, but it was being built on foundations of blood and grief. The memorial garden on Sanctuary Station was small, barely 50 meters across, but it held more peace than any cathedral Sarah had ever seen. Holographic stars floated overhead, representing constellations from 100 different homeworlds. A central fountain recycled water endlessly, the sound soothing in its constancy. Around the perimeter, memorial plaques honored those who had died in service to exploration, trade, and the dream of a connected galaxy. Tomorrow, 3 new names would join them, but today, 2 species gathered to remember. Sarah stood at the front of the assembled crowd, Mira beside her. The girl hadn't left her side since Lyra's death. Hadn't cried again after that first terrible moment, just maintained a silence that was somehow worse than tears. Across from them, Draven's delegation stood in formation. Behind them, 50 Zalkari warriors from the escort fleet, all in ceremonial armor that caught the light like stars. Between them, 3 empty pedestals awaited memorial markers. Station Master Kale stepped forward, his tentacles moving in patterns that his species used to express solemn respect. We gather in the presence of the infinite. He began using the traditional words spoken at memorials across 1,000 cultures, to honor those who have passed beyond our sight, to remember their sacrifices, to ensure their names echo through eternity. He gestured to the first pedestal. Lieutenant Talvek of the Zalkari Empire, 19 cycles old, first deep space assignment aboard the dreadnought Crimson Dawn, died in service to his people. Beloved nephew of War Marshal Draven, promising warrior, lost to accident during first contact with an unknown species. Draven stepped forward. His forearms were crossed in mourning position. His voice was steady, but his crest was flat with grief that he no longer tried to hide. Talvik was my brother's son. I watched him grow from a juvenile, barely able to walk, to a warrior ready to serve the Empire. I recommended him for his first deep space assignment. I believed the experience would make him strong, would prepare him for leadership. He paused. When he continued, his voice was rougher. Instead, I got him killed. Not by enemy malice, not by honorable combat, by accident, by circumstance, by a series of choices that led to a moment where restraints failed and a young life ended because adults couldn't figure out how to talk before shooting. His crest flattened completely. I blamed the humans, blamed Captain Thorne, blamed anyone except myself. But the truth is simpler and more terrible. War kills the young while the old watch. Conflict destroys promise while preserving regret. And Talvik paid the price for our failure to seek understanding before seeking dominance. He looked directly at Sarah. I am sorry, Captain, for blaming you for what was equally my fault, for seeing enemies where I should have sought friends. Talvik's death was tragedy born of mutual misunderstanding and fear. Sarah inclined her head. And I'm sorry we couldn't prevent it, Marshal. Sorry that our first meeting was violence instead of dialogue. Kale gestured to the second pedestal. Engineer Devin Rask of United Earth, 36 years old. Father of twin daughters, Lily and Rose. Died repairing critical systems aboard the USS Pathfinder. Dedicated engineer. Loving father. Hero who sacrificed himself to save his ship and crew. Commander Webb stepped forward. His voice was rough with emotion, barely controlled. Devin was my friend. We served together for 8 years in the deep black. He showed me pictures of his daughters so many times I knew their faces better than my own family's. He talked about teaching them engineering when he got home, about building projects together in his garage, about being there for every milestone, first day of school, first science fair graduation. Webb's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He saved the ship by blocking a plasma leak with his own body. Gave his life so 300 people could live, and his daughters will grow up without him. We'll learn engineering from someone else. We'll have milestones he'll never see. We'll carry scars that time will soften, but never erase. He looked at the assembled Zelkari. This is what conflict costs. Not just warriors, not just combatants, fathers, engineers, people who wanted nothing more than to see their children again, people whose deaths leave holes that can never be filled. Kale moved to the third pedestal. Dr. Lyra Castellan of United Earth, 39 years old, mother, physician, died protecting her daughter from terrorist attack. Courageous, selfless, irreplaceable. Sarah started to step forward, but Mira's hand tightened in hers. I want to speak, the girl whispered. Please. Mira, you don't have to. I want to. Sarah nodded and stayed silent. Mira stepped forward alone. She looked impossibly small in front of the assembled crowd, a 9-year-old child addressing warriors and diplomats in species she barely understood. But her voice was clear, stronger than it had been yesterday. Grief transformed into purpose. My mom wasn't a warrior, she was a doctor. She fixed people when they were broken, made them better when they were sick. She didn't like fighting, didn't like when people hurt each other. Mira's hands twisted together, but she kept speaking. She died because someone wanted us to hate each other. Someone who thought fear was stronger than hope. Someone who believed we couldn't be friends just because we're different. The girl looked up at Draven, at Zarketh, at the assembled Zalkari warriors. My mom was wrong about one thing. She thought dying for me was the most important thing she could do. But it wasn't. The most important thing is what happens next. Whether we learn from her death, whether we choose peace because we understand the cost of war. Mira's voice grew stronger, carrying across the memorial garden. I don't want revenge. I want justice. I want the people who killed my mom to be punished. But more than that, I want to make sure no other kid loses their mom because adults can't figure out how to talk to each other instead of shooting. She turned to face both delegations equally. My mom taught me that differences make us stronger, that we learn more from people who aren't like us, that the galaxy is big enough for everyone, that being different is good, not bad, that we should be curious about aliens, not scared of them. Tears finally came running down her cheeks, but her voice didn't waver. So please, please don't let her be wrong. Don't let her die for nothing. Build the peace she wanted. Make it worth it. Make it mean something. The memorial garden was silent for a long moment that felt like eternity. Then slowly, War Marshal Draven moved forward. He knelt in front of Mira, bringing himself to her eye level, a gesture of respect that his species reserved for equals, not children. Young one, your mother's sacrifice will not be forgotten. I pledge this on my honor, on my family's name, on the memory of my nephew Talvek. We will build the peace she died protecting. We will make her sacrifice mean something. He looked up at Sarah, then at Zarketh, then at his own delegation. Captain Thornfleet Commander Zarketh, I am authorized by the High Council and by the Emperor himself, who has been observing these proceedings, to offer formal diplomatic recognition. Not as conquerors and conquered, not as superior and inferior, but as equals, as partners in exploring this galaxy, as species learning from each other despite our differences. Sarah felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. We accept, Marshal. On behalf of humanity and the United Earth Exploration Service, we accept. Zarketh stepped forward, as well, his crest rising in what Sarah had learned meant approval and commitment. Stage 5, complete full alliance. More than recognition, Captain. The Emperor has reviewed our reports extensively. He sees in humanity something the Empire has lacked for centuries. Innovation, adaptability, the courage to change direction when the current path proves unsustainable. He gestured to the 3 memorial pedestals. These 3 deaths have taught us more than 3,000 years of dominance ever could. They've taught us that strength without wisdom is worthless, that power without restraint is dangerous, that the future belongs not to the strong but to the wise, not to the fearless but to the thoughtful. The Emperor proposes a joint initiative, Draven continued, cultural exchange programs, scientific cooperation, shared exploration of uncharted regions. We bring our resources, our experience, our 3 millennia of knowledge. You bring your innovation, your different perspective, your fresh approaches to old problems. Together we accomplish more than either species could alone. Sarah looked at Mira, at the girl who had lost everything but still chose hope over hate. What do you think? Should we accept? Mira wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Mom would say yes. She'd say this is exactly what she wanted. This is why she died, so we could choose peace. Then we accept, Sarah said formally, with one condition. Name it, Draven said. The terrorists, The ones who attacked the conference hall and killed Dr. Castellan, they face justice. Real justice. Trial, punishment, consequences. Already arranged. We've identified all 3 operatives. 2 died in the attack. 1 survived and has been arrested. He will be tried according to imperial law, and if found guilty, faces execution. Not execution, Sarah said firmly. Life imprisonment. I will not build peace on a foundation of more death, even justified death. Execution is revenge wearing justice's mask. Imprisonment is consequence that serves a purpose. Boo, Draven's crest flattened in surprise. You would show mercy to the one who killed Dr. Castellan. I would show justice. Execution satisfies anger but teaches nothing. Life imprisonment means he lives to see the peace he tried to prevent, means he faces the reality that his hatred failed, that his violence accomplished nothing except grief. This is highly unusual. So is everything else about this situation. But Marshall, consider the message we send. If we execute him, we prove violence works, that killing achieves goals. But if we imprison him, if we make him serve the peace he tried to murder, we prove something better. We prove that hatred has consequences, but so does mercy, that justice and restraint can coexist. Draven considered this carefully, then nodded slowly. Life imprisonment, then, and he will be required to perform community service, to rebuild what he destroyed, to serve the peace he attempted to prevent, to live daily with the reality that his actions failed. Perfect. That's justice. Kale stepped forward again, his tentacles forming respectful patterns. If the memorial ceremony is concluded, I have arranged a formal treaty signing in the main assembly hall. Holographic recording, witnesses from 17 different species who trade through this station. This will be documented for history. Then let's make history, Sarah said. The memorial concluded with a moment of silence. 3 names added to the Garden's eternal record: Lieutenant Telvec, Zelkari Empire Engineer Devin Rask, United Earth Dr. Lyra Castellan. United Earth, 3 lives, 3 sacrifices, 3 prices paid for peace. And as the delegations filed out toward the assembly hall, Mira paused at her mother's memorial marker. She placed her small hand on the smooth surface and whispered words only she and the stars could hear. I'll make you proud, Mom, I promise. I'll build the peace you wanted. I'll be brave. Sarah waited patiently until the girl was ready. Then together they walked toward the future her mother had died to protect. The treaty signing took 3 hours. Documents in multiple languages. Protocols for communication, trade boundaries, cultural exchange. Provisions for resolving disputes through dialogue rather than conflict. Mechanisms for expanding the agreement as both species learn more about each other. 17 different species witnessed the signing, each one recognizing that the galaxy had just shifted in fundamental ways. When it was done, when the last signature was recorded and the holographic records sealed in permanent memory, the assembled witnesses erupted in applause. Sarah shook Draven's hand. The cultural exchange briefing had taught her this wasn't a Zelkari custom, but he adapted, gripping her hand with 2 of his forearms. To peace, Captain Thorne. And to understanding, Marshal Draven. As the crowd dispersed, as delegations began making plans to return to their respective territories with news that would reshape their civilizations, Zarketh approached Sarah privately. Captain, a question, if I may. Of course, Fleet Commander. You mentioned in 12 ships making 12 different contacts across the galaxy. Are you truly building a network of alliances that spans known space? Sarah smiled. Not alliances, friendships. There's a difference. Alliances are political constructs, fragile, transactional. They break when circumstances change. But friendships, real relationships built on mutual respect and shared experiences. Those last. Those grow stronger over time. And you believe humanity can be friends with species across the galaxy? We have to believe it, Commander, because the alternative is another 3,000 years of conflict, another cycle of dominance and subjugation, another pattern that ends in ashes and regret. She looked at Mira, who was talking quietly with one of the younger Zelkari officers about the differences between human and Zelkari writing systems. Children don't see enemies, Fleet Commander. They see potential friends. Maybe we should learn from them. Zarketh's crest rippled in what might have been amusement. You are a dangerous woman, Captain Thorne. You make peace seem possible when all history suggests otherwise. It is possible. We just proved it. For now, but what happens in 5 cycles 1020, when memory fades and new conflicts arise, when the people who made this peace are gone and new generations forget why it mattered? Then we remember these 3 names, Talvec, Rask, Castellan. We remember what we paid for this peace. We teach our children about the cost, and we decide every single day that it was worth protecting. The Joint Academy on Sanctuary Station had grown from a proposal to a reality. 300 students from 15 different species learning together, sharing knowledge, building friendships that would shape the galaxy's future for generations. In a classroom overlooking the memorial garden, where 3 names were carved in eternal stone, a 14-year-old girl stood at the front teaching basic human language to a class of mixed species. Mira Kellaway had her mother's patience and her father's analytical mind. She had Captain Thorne's courage and something else entirely, her own hope transformed from grief resilience, forged in tragedy, the ability to turn loss into purpose. The word peace has interesting etymology, she explained to her students in flawless standard galactic. It comes from an ancient Earth language meaning to make firm or to fasten. Not the absence of conflict, but the active work of building understanding. Peace isn't what you have when nothing is wrong. It's what you build when everything could go wrong, but you choose differently. One of her students, a young Zalkari named Carven, raised a manipulator appendage. Teacher Mira, is it true your mother died in the terrorist attack during the first peace negotiations? The classroom went silent. This was always the difficult question, the one that tested whether grief had healed enough to be discussed without breaking. Mira nodded calmly. Yes. My mother, Dr. Lyra Castellan, died protecting me during an extremist attack 5 years ago. She sacrificed her life so that peace negotiations could continue. Do you hate those who killed her? Mira was quiet for a moment, considering the question with the thoughtfulness her mother had taught her. No, I pity them. They were so afraid of change, so desperate to maintain the old ways of dominance and separation that they chose violence. But their violence failed. Peace succeeded. And now students like you and me study together, learn together, build together. She moved to the window, looking out at the memorial garden, where 3 names marked 3 sacrifices. My mother's death meant something because we chose to make it mean something. We could have chosen revenge, chosen war, chosen to prove the terrorists right, but instead we chose this. She gestured to the classroom. To the students from a dozen different worlds learning human language, sharing their own knowledge, building friendships across species lines. This is my mother's legacy, and I'm honored to be part of it. After class, Mira walked to the memorial garden. It had become a ritual every day at sunset, or what passed for sunset on a space station. She came here to sit beside her mother's memorial. Today she wasn't alone. Captain Sarah Thorne sat on one of the benches, older now, her hair showing more gray. She'd retired from active command of the Pathfinder 2 years ago, accepting a position as ambassador to the Zalkari Empire. The role suited her, all diplomacy, no weapons, just words building bridges. Hello, little one. Hello, Captain. Or should I say, Ambassador? Sarah smiled. I'm retired from the ship, yes. But ambassador still feels wrong. I'm just a teacher now, like you. Mira sat beside her former captain. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the holographic stars rotate overhead, constellations from human and Zalkari, and a dozen other worlds all sharing the same sky. Your mother would be proud, Sarah said finally, of who you've become, what you're building here. I hope so. I know so. She wanted you to see aliens as potential friends, to learn from them, to build something better than what we had. You're doing exactly that. Mira nodded. The Joint Academy has 500 applications for next semester. Students from 21 different species. They want to learn from each other, to understand, to connect. And it started with 3 deaths, 3 sacrifices that could have led to war, but instead led to this, which we honored by making them matter, by choosing construction over destruction. Sarah put her arm around Mira's shoulders, the same gesture she'd made 5 years ago, when a 9-year-old child lost everything. Your mother sang you a lullaby. Do you remember it? Of course, I'll never forget it. Would you sing it for me? Mira smiled, then softly began to sing. But this time she sang it in Zalkari, the language she'd learned from her students, from her friends, from 5 years of building bridges. The words were transformed, but the meaning unchanged, a promise of safety, of protection, of hope for tomorrow. Kelmanash Torvin shall creator Velma Shinkorashtal. A Zalkari child passing by paused to listen. Then another. Then 3 more. Soon a small group had gathered young students from the academy, listening to the human girls sing a human lullaby in their language. And when Mira finished, one of the Zalkari children began singing it back to her. Same melody, different words. A new verse about the binary stars of their homeworld, about the safety of family, about hope spanning the distance between worlds. The children sang together, Human and Zalkari and others, different species, different worlds, same song of hope. Sarah watched with tears in her eyes. This was what Lyra had died for. This was what Devon had sacrificed for. This was what Lieutenant Talbek's death had purchased. Not just peace between governments, but friendship between peoples. Understanding across species. Children singing together under artificial stars, building a future their parents could only dream of. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and wonders and species yet unknown. But somewhere in that vastness, 12 human ships had spread across the stars, each one making contacts, building relationships, creating networks of friendship that spread like roots through fertile soil. And on Sanctuary Station, in a memorial garden, where 3 names were carved in stone, children sang lullabies in languages not their own. Echoes of hope spreading across the stars. The past had been built on dominance and fear. The future would be built on understanding and cooperation. And somewhere between past and future, humanity had learned the most important lesson of all, that the bridge between species wasn't built of men or technology or military might. It was built of small moments, of shared grief and shared hope, of children singing together, of adults choosing patience over violence, of remembering those who sacrificed so others could build something better. 3 names, 3 lives, 3 sacrifices that changed everything. Lieutenant Talbek, Engineer Devon Rask, Dr. Lyra Castellan, they would be remembered. Their names would echo through eternity, and the peace they died for would endure, protected by those who understood its cost.